Chapter 1251. Xiao Yan sat cross-legged on the mountain peak under the clear blue sky. He appeared like an old monk meditating. He was completely unaware of everything that was happening around him. All of his attention was focused on refining the red lotus karmic fire within his body. Boom! Within the vortex, the red lotus hellfire was still incomparably wild despite the obstruction and suppression of the heavenly flame and the extreme cold ice soul. Wave after wave of hot flames continued to sweep across Xiao Yan's body, wantonly destroying it. The frightening high temperature caused Xiao Yan to involuntarily grimace despite his mental fortitude. The muscles all over his body involuntarily tensed up. Cold sweat poured out and the skin all over his body turned red. In addition, the extreme frost ice spirit also emitted an extremely cold aura while frantically suppressing the red lotus karmic fire. At the same time, it also froze Xiao Yan's body. Icicles constantly formed in Xiao Yan's body, turning his meridians, flesh, blood, and even bones icy cold. If it weren't for the heavenly fire protecting his body and the constant flow of Genesis Qi, Xiao Yan's body would have been completely destroyed by the two extremes. In addition to resisting the pain caused by the two types of energy in his body, Xiao Yan also used the blaze mantra to frantically refine and absorb the heavenly fire. Heavenly fire constantly rose from the center of the cyclone, forcibly merging the red lotus karmic fire and the extreme frost ice spirit together, causing the two to gradually reach a balance. When Xiao Yan could withstand the berserk power of the two, he began to refine the red lotus karmic fire with the help of the blaze mantra under the control of the heavenly fire. Borrowing the short moment of balance between the two, Xiao Yan frantically refined the strength of the red lotus hellfire, gradually guiding it into the path of the Qi method of the flame mantra. After a long period of refinement, it returned to the vortex. This was only the first step of the successful refinement. Until a certain moment. Boom! Before Xiao Yan could completely refine and devour the red lotus karmic fire, the last bit of power contained in the extreme frost ice spirit was exhausted, and the terrifying power once again lost control. The power that had been suppressed for a long time instantly erupted, and the ferocious flames instantly destroyed all the defenses set up in Xiao Yan's body. Without any warning or preparation, the red lotus karmic fire rushed out of Xiao Yan's body. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan was once again reduced to a skeleton. His blood was burned and his flesh destroyed, leaving only his skeleton and spirit power to frantically resist the red lotus karmic fire's fury. Ha! A silent angry cry was transmitted from deep within Xiao Yan's spirit. A pale blue flame immediately spat out from his empty eyes. It was like a volcano erupting as it swiftly spread throughout his entire body. In the blink of an eye, every bone on this frightening red flame person's body was filled with pale blue flame. The flame mantra Qi method was being circulated to its limit at this moment. It could even be seen that at the lower abdomen of Xiao Yan's skeleton body, a green-red flame tornado was rotating with a hoo-hoot sound. Every wisp of flame that was burning on his body was being pulled by this tornado and was gradually sucked into it, becoming a part of this tornado. At the same time, the icy aura in the frozen pool at the foot of the mountain was constantly being pulled by some kind of force, and the ice in the pool also melted and dissipated. Blaze mantra. Refine for me. On the mountain peak, when the scarlet red flame gradually disappeared, Xiao Yan's physical body actually appeared once again. After experiencing the cruel refinement of the heavenly flame, his current body was even stronger than before. Under his thin body, every inch of his muscles and even every cell contained a strength that was several times or even 100 times stronger than before. In his body, the refinement of the red lotus hellfire had also been gradually completed. Next, all he needed to do was to merge it with the bone-chilling flame, sea heart flame and the seed flames that he had already refined. Then, everything would be considered complete. In the outside world, not long after Xiao Yan entered the fire maple forest, the Heavenly Puppet Sect and the 10,000 Scorpion Sect officially announced their alliance to the outside world. The situation in the extreme south had also become grim because of this. This matter caused an uproar among countless people. No one could understand why the Heavenly Puppet Sect, as a human race, would ally with the 10,000 Scorpion Sect, betray their identity as humans, and collude with the Magical Beast Clan. Wouldn't such actions be despised by the world? It was also because of this that many factions in the extreme south, who prided themselves as great factions, chose to join the Burning Flame Valley one after another. On one hand, it was to clarify their position as humans. On the other hand, it was also to find a good backer for themselves. After all, If the Heavenly Puppet Sect and the 10,000 Scorpion Sect joined hands and wantonly massacred the large and small factions in the extreme south, they did not think that they had the ability to resist. As for surrendering, the Burning Flame Valley had the Burning Sky Ancestor, a Source Ancestor, overseeing it. Compared to the two sects, the existence of this expert was much more realistic than the various threats. The Burning Flame Valley was not so stupid as to accept all the factions that joined and supported them. After a rough selection, a portion of the factions with a clean background joined. As for the others, they either had other motives or purely came to protect themselves. Naturally, the Burning Flame Valley would not allow them to join. The alliance of the two sects in the extreme south had helped the Burning Flame Valley to consolidate their strength in a certain aspect. However, this kind of action was clearly within their expectations. Therefore, half a year after the two sects joined hands, they organized the first purge of the factions within the Burning Flame Valley. This battle had also completely pulled apart the situation in the extreme south. The Burning Flame Valley did not show any signs of weakness towards the invasion of the two sections. They wantonly mobilized their troops to suppress the two sections. During this period of time, large and small battles were unceasingly fought and the situation was especially intense. It could be said that the land within 1,000 miles was dyed red and smoke filled the sky. Many cities were destroyed in the endless flames of war. Until now, the borders of both sides would be invaded almost every day. This battle lasted for an entire 3 years. During these 3 years, the Burning Flame Valley and the two sects had fought no less than 1,000 battles. However, it was ultimately difficult to determine a victor. However, the two sects did not seem to be worried at all. Not only were they not anxious or nervous, they even continuously expanded their own strength. The eastern part of the extreme south was originally outside of the three sections. However, the two sects had already extended their hands there. Even the southwestern border had long been rumored to have been involved by the Heavenly Puppet Sect. Currently, that place was a complete mess and no one could manage it. As matters stood, a large area of the entire southern region had basically fallen into the hands of the two sections. The battle between both sides was constantly tense and the true big battle was about to arrive. However, it was also at this moment that Xiao Yan, who had been seated cross-legged in the depths of the fire maple forest in the southern part of the extreme south, finally slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 1252. At the top of the cliff, Xiao Yan's eyes, which had been tightly shut for 3 years, finally opened slowly at this moment. At the same time, a purple flame flashed across the depths of his eyes. After 3 years of refining and absorbing, the red lotus hellfire had finally completely merged with the heavenly flame in his body. He stood up and twisted his body gently. A burst of firecracker-like crackling sounds came from the bones all over his body. The comfortable feeling of relaxation made Xiao Yan unable to help but let out a long breath. Feeling the abundant power in his body, the corners of his mouth also revealed a satisfied smile. However, Xiao Yan immediately felt a cold gaze. Turning his head to look, he saw Li Bingrui, who was wearing a blue dress and had a pretty face, standing on a cliff behind him. The cold killing intent was also caused by her. "How is it? Are you happy and satisfied? But my teacher is no longer here. All of this is because of you." Li Bingrui's heart was filled with resentment when she saw Xiao Yan's perfectly fine appearance. She did not expect Xiao Yan to obtain the red lotus yi flame as he wished after she had left despite her master clearly being unwilling to bother with Xiao Yan back then. Although she had left her retreat, she could only watch Xiao Yan continue to refine the yi flame. Of course, Li Bingrui could take advantage of that time to kill Xiao Yan, but she knew that if Yi Honglian did not want to, Xiao Yan would not have been able to refine the red lotus hellfire. Moreover, she did not want to take advantage of Xiao Yan. If she wanted to fight, she wanted to defeat Xiao Yan fair and square. In addition, before she left, Yi Honglian clearly showed that she did not want to care about Xiao Yan. However, after she left, this kind of thing happened again. It was obvious that Yi Honglian was just doing it for her to see. Her purpose was probably to prevent her from continuing to obstruct her. Thinking of this in her heart, Li Bingrui's killing intent could not help but lessen a little. However, when she thought about it, because Xiao Yan caused her to lose her teacher and her only family in this world, she still could not let go of her killing intent towards him. "Sorry, I can understand your feelings, but..." "You understand?" Just as the last word was about to escape her mouth, Li Bingrui suddenly recalled the hooligan behavior that Xiao Yan had done to her back then. This caused her face to reveal an embarrassed and furious expression. At the same time, the suppressed killing intent in her heart suddenly rose. With a wave of her jade-like hand, an ice-long sword immediately condensed in the air. After which, her delicate body shook and she charged toward Xiao Yan without any hesitation. Bastard, I'll make you pay. The distance between the two was not far, and with Li Bingrui's current skills, her movements were naturally faster. In the blink of an eye, the long sword in her hand had already reached Xiao Yan's jaw. In the next second, she could easily take Xiao Yan's life. However, compared to Li Bingrui, Xiao Yan's movements were several times faster. When the long sword pierced towards him, Xiao Yan quickly extended 3 fingers and caught the tip of the long sword. In an instant, he was able to control the long sword in his hand, causing it to be unable to advance any further. Humph! Seeing this scene again, Li Bingrui wasn't too surprised. Instead, the long sword in her hand violently jerked as Genesis Qi surged from her body. A wave of icy Qi immediately spread along the long sword and rapidly attacked Xiao Yan's hand. Ch. However, this frightening cold air, which had once caused Xiao Yan to feel great pressure, was actually vaporized by an invisible hot energy when it reached Xiao Yan's palm this time around. If Li Bingrui was not surprised at the previous scene, the appearance of this scene caused her expression to change drastically. How is this possible? I'm too lazy to listen. A 2-star origin king, huh? Not bad. Xiao Yan pursed his lips into a smile. Soon after, he exerted a little force with his fingertips. An invisible force immediately surged along the sword. With a crack, the entire blade broke, causing Li Bingrui to take half a step back. She then looked at Xiao Yan in disbelief. If not for the difference in cultivation, Xiao Yan would not have been able to completely ignore her icy Genesis Qi. Your cultivation is far above mine. Xiao Yan smiled in a non-committal manner. Soon after he said, let's not talk about this first. Let's leave this place first. I've spent quite some time refining the heavenly flame, and I don't know how the situation is at the Burning Flame Valley. Let's go. After finishing, Xiao Yan turned around to leave. However, Li Bingrui remained unmoved. Although she was filled with complaints toward Xiao Yan in her heart, she also understood that it was impossible for her to kill the other party with her current cultivation. No matter how much she complained, it was useless. Seeing that Li Bingrui was unwilling to leave, Xiao Yan looked towards her again. His gaze swept up and down as he pondered for a moment. Your master told you to follow me. She told me to protect you. If you still listen to her, follow me. If you insist on staying here, I won't say anything else. Xiao Yan no longer paid any attention to her. He lifted his foot and headed towards the northern horizon. Behind him, Li Bingrui hesitated for a moment before following with a cold expression. As for what Xiao Yan had said, Yi Honglian had seen the message her master had left for her when she came out of seclusion. However, she was indeed unwilling to see the person who had caused her to lose her master. If not for Yi Honglian's final instructions, she would definitely not follow this shameless and despicable person in front of her. Now that Xiao Yan's cultivation had stepped into the Origin King realm, it was much faster to cross the fire maple forest again. In just a few hours, he had crossed countless mountains and forests and met Zhu Hao and his son again at the periphery of the fire maple forest. However, rather than saying that they had met, it was better to say that they had been waiting here for a long time. After both parties exchanged some pleasantries, Xiao Yan led Li Bingrui and continued to head north. Zhu Hao, on the other hand, watched the backs of the two people as they left. This was especially the case for Xiao Yan. This kid, no wonder my lord asked me to save him. In just 3 years, his cultivation has reached such a level. However, why is there something else in his aura? Zhu Hao was talking about the Red Lotus Hellfire. On the other hand, Zhu Kan by the side stared at Li Bingrui's departing back with a face full of fear. He had never forgotten this person who had cast a shadow on him when he was young. If it was not because of how frightening Li Bingrui was back then, it was likely that he would not have been able to escape from this fire maple forest. Sigh, you little brat. When can you be like those two? You're the one with the most perfect bloodline awakening out of all of my blood flame birds. If you embarrass me in the future, I'll pluck your feathers and use them as a fan. The moment these words were spoken, Zhu Kan immediately shrunk his head back with a face full of fear. Taking the opportunity when Zhu Hao was shaking his head, Zhu Kan gave a silly smile, turned around, and disappeared into the deep regions of the mountain forest. That speed was likely something that even the current Xiao Yan would be a little surprised if he saw it. The chapters of The Reborn Flame Emperor of Fighting Destruction will continue to be updated on the website. There are no advertisements on the website. Please bookmark and recommend the website. If you like The Reborn Flame Emperor of Fighting Destruction, please bookmark Reborn Flame Emperor of Fighting Destruction. Chapter 1253. After leaving the Fire Maple Forest, Xiao Yan and Shuiyu continued to head north. When they passed by the Poison Cave, Xiao Yan's swiftly flying figure paused for a moment. Thinking back to the battle back then, it was Xiao Mingyuan who had appeared in the end to save him and Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian had already gone to the central region. If he wanted to see Xiao Xian again, Xiao Yan needed to head to the central region first. However, before that, it was best to return to the Burning Flame Valley to take a look. The two of them swiftly passed through a large wasteland along the way. In the past, they would have needed 2 to 3 days to pass through the endless desert. This time around, Xiao Yan and Xiao Xian merely used a couple of hours. By the time the two of them reached the border of the 10,000 Scorpion Gate, the city that Xiao Yan and Xiao Xian had once passed through, it was already late. Night had quietly descended without anyone noticing. The two of them originally had no intention of stopping, but just as they flew above the city, the conversation of the people in the city drifted into Xiao Yan's ears. Sigh, I wonder what the outcome of the battle will be. Logically speaking, the Burning Flame Valley should be superior. After all, they have a Genesis sect expert like the ancestor of the Burning Sky sect. With him around, the Burning Flame Valley should be fine. That may be the case, but it's said that the sect master's puppet is extremely powerful. It's already comparable to a 9-star Origin Emperor, and he himself is an Origin Emperor. With the two of them working together, it's said that they can even put up a fight against a Genesis sect expert. Moreover, the sect master of the 10,000 Scorpion sect is a peak Origin Emperor. If the two of them work together with the indestructible puppet, even the ancestor of the Burning Sky sect might not be able to defeat them. Many people in the surroundings revealed expressions of regret when they reached there. After all, the Burning Flame Valley was once the strongest organization in the extreme south. However, now that the two great sects had joined hands, even with the Burning Flame Valley's foundation, it would be difficult for them to be a match. However, just as they finished speaking, a fair hand stealthily landed on the shoulder of one of them. At the same time, a slightly gloomy voice was transmitted into their ears. What did you say happened in the Burning Flame Valley? The sudden voice caused the expressions of the surrounding people to instantly change. Just as they were about to turn around and berate, an extremely frightening aura and pressure suddenly descended on their heads. The bodies of the few people were instantly intimidated by this pressure to the point that they were unable to move. The emotions in the bottom of their hearts had also turned into panic. They had never imagined that such a strong person would actually attack them. Could it be that it was because they had spoken a few words about the Burning Flame Valley? However, this place was clearly within the territory of the 10,000 Scorpion sect. A moment later, under the pressure of Xiao Yan, someone finally revealed all the information that he knew. However, the expression on Xiao Yan's face did not change even a little after he heard it. Instead, it became even more gloomy. Although these fellows boasted in front of others, they only knew about the battle between the two sects and the Burning Flame Valley. They were completely unaware of the exact number of experts from both parties. This kind of information was worse than nothing to Xiao Yan. Sir, this is indeed all the information that we know. Please be magnanimous. If you wish to know more information, you should head to the city governor's mansion in the city. There is currently a Origin King expert from the 10,000 Scorpion Gate present there. He should. Before the person in front of him could finish speaking, Xiao Yan's spiritual strength had already locked onto the only Origin King level expert in the city at this moment. Subsequently, his body suddenly flashed and disappeared from this dark night street. At the same time, deep within a mansion in the city, an ugly large man was currently sitting naked on a bed. He was hugging a beautiful woman with an enchanting figure. Their two bodies were tightly entwined together. Their bodies continued to move against each other as lewd laughter and moans reverberated endlessly in the hall. However, at a certain moment, the sound suddenly stopped. The beautiful woman's throat had already been cut by an invisible force. As for the large man, his throat had already been grabbed by a large white hand. His entire body was lifted into the air. The crazed expression in his eyes from a moment ago had yet to disappear. In the blink of an eye, It was replaced by endless fear. In front of him, a handsome man wearing a black robe was standing alone. His expression was extremely dark and cold. Killing intent surged in his eyes as he stared at him. You. Who are you? The large man spat out with difficulty. The emotions in his heart were incomparably terrified. He didn't even sense the latter's aura and was actually controlled by the person in front of him. This was truly unbelievable. Now, answer whatever I ask. Xiao Yan ignored the latter's words as he spoke in a faint voice. Immediately, he opened his mouth to inquire. However, this fellow did not appear to be willing to easily cooperate. He was just about to resist when Xiao Yan randomly broke both of his arms. The large man's mouth involuntarily emitted a painful wail. Answer whatever I ask. If there's a next time, it won't be just like this. The hand holding the large man tightened slightly, and the latter's already flushed face couldn't help but tremble. He could only hurriedly respond. Afterwards, Xiao Yan asked about the specific situation between the three sections. It was also at this moment that Li Bingrui entered the room from outside the hall. However, when she saw the **** scene in the hall, her face immediately became as red as fire. Her eyes quickly glanced at Xiao Yan's body. After which, she curled her lips and quickly turned around to leave the hall. After a long while, when Xiao Yan came out, the two of them didn't exchange much words. They once again stepped into the air and quickly flew towards the northern horizon. After the interrogation earlier, only then did Xiao Yan know that he had already been in a retreat for over 3 years. During these 3 years, the situation in the extreme south had undergone a tremendous change. All of this was just as Ancestor Fantion had predicted back then. The most important point was that the two sects had already turned out in full force not long ago. Almost all of the experts had joined forces and headed towards the Burning Flame Valley. The purpose of this trip seemed to be to destroy the Burning Flame Valley. Their momentum was so great that it was rumored that there were dozens of experts above the king level. This was what Xiao Yan was most worried about. Other people might not know, but he clearly understood that other than this group of dozens of experts, there were definitely experts from the ghost hall behind them. Once those people attacked, it would be difficult to protect them even with the Burning Heaven ancestor present. Moreover, the little fairy doctor and Bai Hua were definitely still waiting for his return in the Burning Flame Valley. This time, no matter what, he needed to hurry back to the Burning Flame Valley before the big battle. With this thought, Xiao Yan's forward speed increased. Although Li Bingrui was complaining in her heart, she swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth when she saw Xiao Yan's dark expression. She could only circulate the Genesis Qi in her body and do her best to catch up to Xiao Yan. Chapter 1254. After exiting the territory of the 10,000 Scorpion sect, Xiao Yan swiftly headed in the direction of the Burning Flame Valley. Li Bingrui followed closely behind him. With Xiao Yan's current speed, passing through the territory of the Heavenly Puppet sect at full speed was many times faster than before. In the dark night, the two of them were just like shooting stars as they streaked across the horizon. In a couple of blinks of an eye, they had already disappeared into the horizon. Even some of the experts in the city below could only see 2 blurry light figures flashing past at the very most. It was difficult for them to capture the figures of the latter. At this moment, Xiao Yan's expression was gloomy. 3 years had changed many things. The originally tense situation in the extreme south had been completely pulled apart. The two sects had joined hands, and the Burning Flame Valley did not give any face to the other party. Now, it had even implicated the upper echelons of the sections. From the looks of it, they did not intend to continue being content with their lot. Although the Burning Flame Valley had the mental support of the Burning Sky Ancestor in this battle, he was after all the only Origin sect expert. On the other hand, the other party's 2 sect leaders were people whose fighting strength could fight against an ordinary Origin sect expert. Moreover, there were quite a number of experts at the Origin King level and above in the other party's group. Even though the Burning Flame Valley's experts had tyrannical fighting strength, they were ultimately defeated in terms of numbers. If this dragged on, it was likely that it would be difficult for them to win. To Xiao Yan, the most important thing was Ghost Palace. If it were not for the secret support of these people who were neither human nor ghost, it would be impossible for the 2 large sects to be so rampant. At the end of the day, it was still because of those people. With the speed of the 2 of them, they had already entered the territory of the Burning Flame Valley by the morning of the 2nd day. The dense smoke in the air had also become much fainter. Upon reaching this place, The emotions within Xiao Yan's heart had also become a little warmer. They had finally returned to the territory of the Burning Flame Valley. This also meant that they were not too far away from the Burning Flame Valley. Huff! Xiao Yan heaved a long sigh of relief. A fiery light flashed within his eyes. After which, his body shook and the speed at which he was charging suddenly increased. There were few signs of human habitation on a vast plain. As far as the eye could see, not a single beast could be seen. A gentle breeze blew across the land, giving it a cool and unrestrained feeling. Coupled with the clear blue sky, it could be considered a treasure land. Suddenly, a wave of rushing wind sounds could be heard from the horizon. Soon after, 2 rays of light flashed past one after another. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived direction. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived at the other side. In the sky, they could be considered as a treasure land. Li Bingrue involuntarily frowned when she saw Xiao Yan's body stop. A suspicious expression was revealed on her face. Soon after, Xiao Yan's eyes suddenly turned and looked towards the north. At the edge of his sight, there were a few familiar auras. However, he could sense that those auras were gradually weakening. If this continued, the owners of those auras would likely die. A thought passed through his mind. The vast ocean-like spiritual strength between Xiao Yan's brows immediately swept out. It swiftly spread out. Within a short couple of breaths' time, the situation in the distance had been completely absorbed into his mind. That is, the Fang clan and the heavenly puppet sect Ha. Xiao Yan softly muttered as he withdrew his spiritual strength. With his enormous spiritual strength, Xiao Yan could clearly sense that other than the Fang clan, there was also an expert from the heavenly puppet sect, a Yuan King-level expert. Adding the puppet with frightening fighting strength, it was only natural that the Fang clan would be defeated. Due to his impression of the Fang clan, Xiao Yan was originally unwilling to take action. However, the matter now concerned the Burning Flame Valley. Moreover, the Fang clan was also within the Burning Flame Valley. Due to various reasons, Xiao Yan finally moved after some hesitation. He swiftly flew towards the Fang clan. Today, the Fang clan could be said to be incomparably miserable. Back then, they had not clearly stated that they wanted to join the Burning Flame Valley, and had also turned a deaf ear to the threat of the 10,000 Scorpion sect. As a result, both parties were now treating them with disdain. Even begging for mercy was no longer of any use. Even if they wanted to compromise and join the Heavenly Puppet sect, they were actually beaten back by the other party. As matters stood, the Fang clan could be said to be isolated and without help. They had become enemies with all sides. Most importantly, none of these opponents were people that they could afford to offend. This was the reason why they could not afford to offend them. An elder from the Heavenly Puppet sect had single-handedly challenged his entire clan by himself and a puppet. The entire Fang clan had used all their strength, but they were actually unable to last more than 10 rounds against the other party. As for the clan leader, Fang Qi, who had the strongest cultivation in the clan, he was also beaten to the point that he was unable to retaliate. At this moment, he already appeared to be on the verge of death. Humph. Back then, I, the Heavenly Puppet sect, kindly invited your Fang clan to join us, but you refused. Now you know to beg for mercy? In the Fang clan's mansion, an old man wearing the uniform of the Heavenly Puppet sect slowly descended from the sky. He looked at Fang Qi, who was currently lying on the ground, with a disdainful expression. His eyes were filled with ridicule. The remaining members of the Fang clan in the surroundings had either been killed or injured in the previous battle. Even the 3 elders of the clan were unable to block a single attack from this person. On the other side, a silver puppet was currently slaughtering the remaining members of the Fang clan in an unbridled manner. This old man walked step by step towards Fang Qi, and a foot descended towards Fang Qi's head, intending to kill him on the spot. However, in the next instant, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Fang Qi's son, Fang Jitsong, suddenly flashed forward, intending to stop the old man. Get lost from my father's side. A furious roar rang out from Fang Jitsong's mouth. A punch that contained all the strength in his body violently smashed towards the old man's head. Humph! A mayfly trying to shake a tree. Seeing this, the old man laughed instead of being angry. He casually waved his sleeve towards Fang Jitsong, who was attacking him. The soft sleeve immediately became as hard as steel, and violently smashed onto Fang Jitsong's body. With just this attack, Not only did it send him flying, it also instantly caused Feng Jitsong to be seriously injured. Seeing that his son was seriously injured, Feng Qi immediately struggled to get up. However, his chest was immediately stepped on by the old man. Before he could spit out the words from his mouth, another large mouthful of blood surged out. His body, which was already seriously injured, was now exhaling more than it was taking in. Kakik, today is the day that your Feng clan will be annihilated. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself. Who asked you to act smart and actually have the delusion of drifting between the three great sects? From today onwards, in the extreme south, no one will be able to go against the will of my heavenly puppet sect. As the sinister laughter rang out, the old man once again raised his foot, intending to stomp down on Feng Qi's head for the final time. However, it was also at this moment that the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out. In the next second, this Origin King expert of the heavenly puppet sect had already been stepped on by a domineering force. Before he could even react, he was killed by Xiao Yan. Chapter 1255. After killing the elder of the heavenly puppet sect with a single strike, the puppet on the other side also instantly stopped moving. Looking around the messy courtyard, Xiao Yan could not help but shake his head. After decisively keeping the old fellow's storage ring and the puppet, he prepared to leave. Mr. Xiao Yan. However, just at this moment, Feng Jitsong, who had been sent flying, struggled to climb up. His face was filled with disbelief as he looked at the young man in front of him. He did not expect that after 3 years, he would actually be saved by Xiao Yan once again. Moreover, the strength that Xiao Yan displayed today was actually so terrifying. Is something the matter? Xiao Yan did not dislike Feng Jitsong. However, saving them was just a temporary thought. At this moment, since the matter was resolved, there was naturally no need to continue staying. Is Mr. Xiao Yan going to the Burning Flame Valley? The Burning Flame Valley is about to start a war with the two sections. Naturally, I have to rush back to help. Xiao Yan nodded his head. However, he felt a trace of suspicion towards Feng Jitsong's question in his heart. Since he already knew, why did he need to ask? However, the location of the war between the two sects is not in the Burning Flame Valley. What did you say? When Feng Jitsong's words left his mouth, Xiao Yan's expression immediately changed. If it was not in the Burning Flame Valley, what was the use even if he rushed back now? Are you certain? I am certain that the agreed battlefield between the Burning Flame Valley and the two sects is not in the Burning Flame Valley. Instead, it is in the southern barbarian city, which is south of the Burning Flame Valley. That is one of the strongholds of the Burning Flame Valley. Both sides had already fought fiercely a few days ago. However, the people from the two sects did not use their full strength. Instead, it seemed that they were testing the Burning Flame Valley. Feng Jitsong did not hide anything and told Xiao Yan everything that he knew. Perhaps, he wanted to use this to create a chance for his Feng clan and the Burning Flame Valley. After all, the current Feng clan could no longer withstand any destruction. How do you know all this? Xiao Yan knitted his brows. Since the Feng clan did not join the Burning Flame Valley, how would he know so clearly about the battle between the Burning Flame Valley and the two sects? Because the Feng family has sent out spies to constantly monitor the situation between the Burning Flame Valley and the two sections. This is the news that the spies of the Feng family sent back yesterday. It is also because of this that the experts of the Heavenly Puppet Sect have been provoked. At the end of his words, Feng Jitsong could not help but reveal a bitter expression. There were many things that he did not want to do, nor did he want to understand. However, his father was, after all, the head of the clan, and many things were not up to him to decide. If Feng Qi had not hesitated and refused to clarify his position, and instead took the opportunity to curry favor with the three sects, perhaps his Feng family would not be in such a situation today. In the end, it was Xiao Yan who saved them. Xiao Yan nodded his head when he heard Feng Jitsong's words. After which, his toes pressed on the ground and he leaped into the sky. He called out to Li Bingrui and the two of them quickly turned into 2 rays of light that swiftly flew toward the southeast. The southern barbaric city was located in the southeast of the Burning Flame Valley, and was connected to the territory of the Heavenly Puppet Sect. There were continuous mountain ranges on both sides, spanning tens of thousands of miles. In front was a vast forest, while behind was a vast plain. The two completely different terrains were separated by mountains, causing the southern barbaric city to appear even more distinct. The city was built in the narrow crevice of the mountain range. This place was originally a river channel, but the city borrowed the terrains on both sides and was built on top of the river channel. Looking from afar, the surging river water rushed out from below the city gate, giving it the majestic aura of a magnificent army. However, at this moment, the upper echelons of the burning flame valley were standing on top of the city tower. Their solemn gazes looked at the group of experts in the distance outside the city, and their hearts were filled with nervousness. This time, the two great sects could be said to have sent out all their elites. All the experts at the Origin King level and above added up to over 30 people. In addition to the puppet that the Heavenly Puppet sect relied on for survival, the trouble that the Burning Flame Valley would face in this battle was truly quite a lot. Valley Chief, there are 3 elders in the valley who are seriously injured in yesterday's battle. I'm afraid that they are unable to participate in today's battle. In this way, in terms of the number of experts we have, they are planning to use this method to drag us down. First, they will use those damn puppets as the vanguard, causing our elders to exhaust a large amount of their strength. After which, they will attack us one by one. If this continues, these elders will not be able to endure for a few days. Humph, nibbling away at our strength. What a good method. The Burning Sky ancestor clenched his fist tightly under his sleeves. Although he was furious in his heart, there was nothing he could do. His Burning Flame Valley was completely unafraid if they were to face either of these two great sects head-on. Even with the help of the puppets, the Heavenly Puppet sect of the past was far inferior to them in terms of the number and strength of their experts. However, within a short 3 years, the number of experts within the Heavenly Puppet sect had suddenly soared, and their numbers had nearly doubled. Adding those puppets and the assistance from the 10,000 Scorpion sect, the Burning Flame Valley was unable to contend against them. Sigh. The other Burning Flame Valley elders around the tower could not help but sigh when they thought of this. Their Burning Flame Valley would probably be erased from the southernmost region after this battle. The little fairy doctor and Bai Hua were currently standing at one side of the city gate tower. Behind the two of them, a slim and graceful young girl was also frowning as she looked at the two people before her. This girl was Lian who had already awoken from her coma. After 3 years, Bai Hua had already become an Origin King. She could be said to be quite a large force in this battle. Her powerful cultivation and strange battle techniques had actually caused quite a few experts from the two sects to fear her. Although the little fairy doctor had yet to reach Origin King, she had already become a returnance expert. Coupled with her status as the woeful poison body, the poison techniques she used were something that even some ordinary Origin Kings dared not underestimate. However, even with that being the case, their assistance in this battle was utterly inadequate. At this moment, the little fairy doctor and Bai Hua Yan were gazing at the distant horizon. They only hoped that Xiao Yan would be able to learn about the grim situation and return in time. Compared to the so-called experts present, they believed in Xiao Yan's strength more. This had always been the case. Are you still waiting for him to return? The Burning Sky ancestor stepped forward with a kind smile from one side. Although he knew that the current situation was tense, he still did his best to let the people before him relax a little. The little fairy doctor smiled politely when she heard that. However, her furrowed brows revealed her current emotions. Cuckoo, relax. Since that person is following him, nothing will happen to Xiao Yan. The old me does not dare to guarantee anything else, but it is likely that you will not be able to find anyone stronger than that person in this southernmost region. The Burning Sky ancestor was referring to Xiao Yan. If it were not for the fact that he had sensed the Burning Flame Valley back then, he would not have known where Xiao Yan had gone. However, even though he said that, he had still not returned for 3 years. It was clearly impossible for him to make the little fairy doctor relax with just a few words. After this battle, I will get the Grand Elder to personally send you to a safe place. When you see Xiao Yan in the future, don't say that I've mistreated you, haha. At the end of his words, the Burning Sky ancestor laughed out loud. His laughter, which seemed to be teasing, carried some desolation. The little fairy doctor and Bai Hua hurriedly opened their mouths when they heard that. However, they were stopped by the Burning Sky ancestor with a wave of his hand. There's no need to say any more. This dispute originally belonged to our 3 great sections. You should not have participated in it. However, because of your relationship with Xiao Yan, you were able to lend a hand when my Burning Flame Valley was in danger. I am extremely grateful for this. However, it is also because of this that I cannot let you take this risk. After saying that, the old man did not say anything else. When he turned around, he saw that the group of people who were sitting by the river outside the city had unknowingly stood up. Dense and cold gazes pierced through the air like sharp arrows, causing one's heart to tremble. These fellows. Are they going to start again? After saying that in his heart, the Burning Sky ancestor immediately turned his head to look at the group of elders of the Burning Flame Valley and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, prepare for battle." All the elders of the Burning Flame Valley immediately responded in unison. Pairs of furious eyes instantly looked towards the group of figures outside the city. At the same time, their bodies shook as surging Genesis chi surged out from their bodies, transforming into pillars of light that soared into the sky. They stood above the city tower like rainbows, a sight that shook one's soul. Chapter 1256. Outside southern barbaric city, as energy surged from both sides, an intense battle unfolded. After the fierce battle from the day before, the formation that was originally set up to defend the city had long been broken. Hence, today's battle was a showdown between the experts from both sides right from the start. The two sects still used the same tactic as yesterday. They first used the puppets to exhaust a portion of the Genesis chi of the Burning Flame Valley experts, before each of them stepped onto the stage. They faced the Burning Flame Valley experts in their peak condition, causing quite a number of them to cut a sorry figure the moment they appeared. Although the Burning Flame Valley experts were unwilling to accept this, there was nothing they could do about it. In the face of puppets that did not know pain, even they had no choice but to be careful. Over time, the wear and tear on their bodies would naturally be unavoidable. If the fellows hiding at the back suddenly attacked, even they might not be able to dodge. Only when the experts from both sides had entered the battle circle did the real battle officially begin. There were no flashy moves. Both sides had a total of several dozen experts at the Yuan King level and above mixed together. The scale of the battle was simply shocking. In the entire extreme south, there were only a few experts at the Yuan King level and above. However, more than half of them had already arrived. Compared to the day before, the situation of the battle today was undoubtedly much more intense. The hatred and fury from the day before had completely transformed into a raging flame that burned in their chests during the battle today. Energy poured out unceasingly. Even after a battle, the strength displayed by the experts from the Burning Flame Valley was still frightening. Other than the intense battlefield, Ancestor Fention's gaze was fixed on a middle-aged man in golden robes in the air across from him. The two of them faced off against each other. Neither of them would easily attack, because once they did, it meant that there would be no chance for the battle to stop. Apart from one side winning, there would only be mutual destruction. This person was the sect master of the heavenly puppet sect, Ran Fu. Beside him was a golden puppet. Besides his own cultivation, this puppet was Ran Fu's greatest trump card, the Vajra puppet, whose strength was comparable to a 9-star origin emperor. With the puppet and Ran Fu's cultivation, even Ancestor Burning Heavens would have to be cautious. If he were to be hit by the Vajra puppet, it would be no joke. Besides this side, the sect master of the 10,000 Scorpion sect, Xie Shan, remained outside of the battle as if it had nothing to do with him. According to the plan, this battle was to nibble away at the enemy. Today was only the second day of the battle, and there was no need for him to use his full strength. Moreover, Burning Heaven Ancestor was not an easy opponent, and Ran Fu was not so kind as to ally with him. If anything happened and he was implicated, the losses would outweigh the gains. As time slowly passed, the battle in the field became more and more intense, and the originally unclear situation began to surface one by one. After all, the two sects had the advantage in numbers. In addition to the indestructible Vajra puppet that did not know fatigue, the Burning Flame Valley's disadvantage gradually became apparent. Great Elder Li Chengxiu was still doing fine. With his powerful cultivation as a 6-star origin emperor, he was able to barely hold on despite fighting against 2 origin emperors and a Vajra puppet. However, the others were not as powerful. At this moment, there were even people who were injured and had lost the ability to fight. The appearance of this scene caused Ancestor Burning Sky, who was high up in the sky, to frown. The worry on his aged face gradually became apparent. On Bai Hua's side, she and the fairy doctor worked together to fend off an origin king from the heavenly puppet sect. At the same time, they faced a powerful puppet, 1 origin king and 1 returnance. It was already difficult for them to fend off 2 origin kings, let alone the fact that one of them was a puppet. The long battle was disadvantageous, and the little fairy doctor and Bai Hua's Genesis chi was rapidly depleted. They were already gradually weakening and would not be able to last much longer. In particular, the little fairy doctor's cultivation was lacking, so she could not endure such exhaustion. In just a short while, the Genesis chi in her body had almost dried up. Kakik, what's wrong? Have you run out of Genesis chi? Just as the little fairy doctor was gasping for breath, the Origin King expert from the Heavenly Puppet Sect suddenly appeared beside her. As he snickered, his 5 fingers curled into claws and mercilessly swiped at the little fairy doctor's neck. Piss off! It was also at this moment that the figure in front of the little fairy doctor suddenly flashed over. With a wave of his hand, milky white Genesis chi immediately spouted out from his palm, knocking the person in front of her back with a single strike. Bai Hua also took half a step back with a pale face. Just as she turned around, she saw the little fairy doctor's body go limp, about to fall from the sky. Bai Hua's expression immediately changed. She could not care less as she hurriedly reached out to grab the little fairy doctor. However, the sound of rushing wind rang out a split second later as the Origin King expert caught up once again. Kakik, you want to save someone? You'd better worry about yourself first. As the sharp laughter sounded out, a few ghastly scratch marks were left on Bai Hua's back. Even though this was the case, Bai Hua's outstretched hand was still a little short of the little fairy doctor. Hence, she could only watch as the little fairy doctor's delicate body fell downwards. The person in front of her once again raised his hand and struck Bai Hua's back. Immediately, Bai Hua's face flushed red and a large mouthful of blood was involuntarily spat out from her mouth. Her entire aura instantly fell to rock bottom. In the sky, the expression on Patriarch Scorching Heaven's face changed drastically when he saw this scene. Just as he was about to save Bai Hua, he was blocked by the Vajra puppet that had appeared in front of him in the next second. Hee, Patriarch Scorching Heaven, your opponent is me. You will regret this. The old man's face trembled in anger. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Ren Fu, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. From the moment I cooperated with them, I no longer know what regret is. This is because right now, I will only succeed and not fail. A ferocious laughter was emitted from Ren Fu's mouth. Scorching Heaven's face was filled with disdain. At the same time, a silver-colored puppet suddenly appeared above the little fairy doctor's head. It waved its metal fist and smashed towards the little fairy doctor's chest. If this attack landed, the little fairy doctor would definitely die. In the sky, Bai Hua's expression was extremely ugly at this moment. She ignored the injuries on her body and forcefully used her remaining strength to descend and save the little fairy doctor. However, an ice-cold hand quickly grabbed her from behind and lifted her entire body. Kakik, I can understand the feeling of a hero saving a beauty. Unfortunately, you are destined to be a hero. As he spoke, the Origin King expert from the Heavenly Puppet Sect was about to exert force with his 5 fingers. However, in the next instant, an ice-cold hand landed on the back of his neck in a ghost-like manner. Before he could react, it violently clenched. One could hear a clear cracking sound as the neck of this Origin King expert was forcefully broken. At almost the same time, the little fairy doctor's delicate body, which was falling downwards, was caught by another pair of delicate hands. As for the puppet that descended from the sky, it was instantly sent flying by a huge ruler. Soon after, sunlight scattered down and shone on a familiar face. Who else could this person be other than Xiao Yan? Chapter 1257. That is, Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan has returned. The sudden appearance of Xiao Yan caused the battle in the arena to temporarily stop. Numerous gazes that were filled with various expressions were shot over, and all of them landed on Xiao Yan's body. This was especially so for the experts from the Burning Flame Valley. After seeing the frightening agility that Xiao Yan displayed, their faces involuntarily revealed shocked expressions. It was likely that there were few amongst them who could compare with such frightening agility and speed. This also proved that Xiao Yan's current cultivation was likely much stronger than theirs. It was difficult to imagine just what exactly Xiao Yan had experienced during these 3 years to be able to obtain such a frightening growth in his cultivation. Seeing the appearance of Xiao Yan, the tightly knitted eyebrows of the Burning Sky ancestor also relaxed at this moment. He lifted his gaze and once again landed on Ren Fu in front of him as he coldly laughed. This old man had just said that you would regret it. Now it has really come true. Oh, so that Xiao Yan is him. The person who nearly killed my son 3 years ago is actually this Xiao Yan. Ren Fu's eyes narrowed slightly. The gaze with which he stared at Xiao Yan gradually became dark and cold. At the same time, there was also a mocking expression deep within his eyes. Xiao Yan, ah. After waiting for so long, you have finally appeared. Sorry, I've returned a little late. With one hand supporting Bai Hua, Xiao Yan revealed an apologetic expression as he spoke. At the same time, his other hand took out 2 medicinal pills from his storage ring and fed them to Bai Hua and the little fairy doctor. Haha, it's fine. I knew that you would definitely rush back. Feeling the warm medicinal strength within her body, Bai Hua parted her mouth and revealed a comforting smile. You got the heavenly flame? Hearing this, Xiao Yan was startled at first. Then, he suddenly felt an ice-cold aura. He carefully glanced at Li Bingrui, who was holding the little fairy doctor, before nodding his head. At the same time, Bai Hua also noticed the latter's presence. Her expression froze for a moment before the image of the woman whom they had met 3 years ago when they were traveling to the extreme south surfaced in her mind. Why is she with you? Bai Hua raised her eyebrows. She remembered that this woman didn't have a good opinion of Xiao Yan. Let's talk about this later. Let's settle this first. Regarding Li Bingrui, although Xiao Yan also held a sense of helplessness, now was not the time to chat, so he temporarily suppressed this matter. Humph, smelly brat. Aren't your words a little too arrogant? You merely used a sneak attack to kill an expert from my heavenly puppet sect. Don't tell me that you think that you will have such an opportunity. Accompanied by a sinister and cold laughter, Xiao Yan suddenly heard a whooshing sound. In the blink of an eye, an attack that was filled with killing intent had already arrived behind Xiao Yan. At this moment, some of the people in the sky who had focused their gazes on Xiao Yan finally regained their senses. Just as their expressions changed, they suddenly heard a muffled collision sound. Soon after, a figure was sent flying from behind Xiao Yan without any warning. Grug! While the figure flew backwards, fresh blood continuously spurted out from his mouth as though it was free. His entire face instantly turned deathly pale, while the deep hole on his chest was even more eye-piercing. This expert, whose cultivation was at least a 3-star origin king, was actually seriously injured by a single punch from Xiao Yan. The most shocking thing was that no one had discovered when exactly Xiao Yan had attacked. After seriously injuring a origin king with a single blow, Xiao Yan finally slowly stood up in front of everyone's shocked gazes. He lifted his head and looked at Ancestor Fention in the sky, exchanging a smile with him. His gaze paused on Ren Fu for a moment, before he looked towards the people wearing the uniforms of the 2 sections. With a clench of his right hand, a giant pitch-black ruler appeared inch by inch. At the same time, a purple flame suddenly rose within his pitch-black eyes. You protect them. I'll take care of the rest. As soon as Xiao Yan uttered those words that couldn't be refuted, his figure instantly disappeared from the spot. Then, the originally empty space in front of an expert from the 2 sects suddenly distorted. Before he could react, a heavy ruler viciously smashed into his chest. Grug! Blood mixed with fragments of internal organs suddenly sprayed out from his mouth, and his entire body was instantly blasted backwards. When he smashed into the ground, he had already lost the ability to fight and was on the verge of fainting. By the time everyone regained their senses, 3 origin kings had already been seriously injured by Xiao Yan's giant ruler. It wasn't until a 7-star origin king acted that he was able to block Xiao Yan's attack with his powerful Genesis Chi. Even so, the power pouring out from the giant ruler almost broke his arms. What terrifying physical strength! Even this fellow's speed is far superior to any origin king. Could he be an origin emperor? How is it possible for such a young origin emperor expert to be? While shocked, Xiao Yan turned around and swung his ruler. Torrential waves of fire poured out from the giant ruler and swept towards the 7-star origin king. The 7-star origin king didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. He brandished the giant blade in his hand, and Genesis Chi rapidly gathered on it. Then, he swung it forward with all his strength. Boom! A soul-stirring energy ripple immediately swept apart when the explosive bang sounded, shaking Xiao Yan and the other person back. Soon after, however, Xiao Yan's body once again appeared in front of the 7-star origin king in a ghost-like manner. In front of the latter's shocked eyes, Xiao Yan held the enormous ruler with both hands and violently swung it down. The ruler heavily smashed into the 7-star origin king's chest. With a bang, the 7-star origin king's entire body flew back uncontrollably. After which, it smashed onto the ground. Their experts were seriously injured one after another. This made the faces of the people from the two sects turn ashen, especially those whose cultivation bases weren't as high as the former. Their eyes were filled with horror as they looked at Xiao Yan. Even the 7-star Origin King's all-out attack couldn't successfully repel Xiao Yan. If it were them, how would they fare? Xiao Yan turned his head around. His gaze scanned the entire place, appearing to be choosing his next target. This also caused everyone from the two sects present to feel extremely fearful in their hearts. It was as though they were afraid that they would be chosen by this killing god in front of them. Humph! Arrogant brat. Do you really think no one can deal with you? This old man wants to see how capable you are. Seeing the expressions on the faces of the Origin Kings from the two sects, an Origin King from the 10,000 Scorpion sect could no longer hold back. With a cold shout, his figure flashed and appeared in front of Xiao Yan. The 5 fingers of his right hand were pressed together, Genesis Chi covering his fingertips as he used his hand as a blade to slice at Xiao Yan's throat. Xiao Yan naturally did not dare to be careless in the face of the attack of an Origin Emperor. His expression did not change. The enormous ruler in his hand swept out while his body pulled back. It was accompanied by a sonic boom as it smashed towards the other party's head. Humph, insignificant skill. Seeing this, the old man's face involuntarily revealed a disdainful expression. At the same time his body leaned to the side. His skinny left hand grabbed at the incoming thick blade of the ruler. At almost the same time, the attack on his right hand was only a few inches away from Xiao Yan's throat. However, in the next moment, when the old man's left hand grasped the heavy Xian Buster sword, the expression on his old face suddenly changed. His entire body suddenly sank down uncontrollably. His originally charging figure also instantly stopped because of this. Xiao Yan involuntarily let out a cold laugh when he saw this. The instant he withdrew the heavy Xian ruler, he flipped his hand and swung the ruler from bottom to top. Just as the tip of the ruler was about to smash onto the old man's face, the latter's body abruptly pulled back. The wide and thick tip of the ruler was close to the old man's face as it violently drew across. What a strange weapon! The old man's face still had lingering fear after dodging Xiao Yan's attack. He recalled what had happened the instant his hand touched the heavy Xian ruler. The expression on his old face couldn't help but change. When he saw Xiao Yan's casual appearance as he held the giant ruler, he couldn't help but curse him as a monster in his heart. Just as the old man was about to attack again, the first elder of the Burning Flame Valley, Li Chengxiu, rushed past his opponent from earlier and arrived in front of Xiao Yan. His expression was cautious as he looked at Xiao Yan. Only then did his gaze sweep up and down Xiao Yan's body. Are you all right? Xiao Yan smiled and shook his head when he heard this, indicating that he was fine. Li Chengxiu finally relaxed when he saw this. Immediately, his gaze once again returned to the Origin King expert from the 10,000 Scorpion sect. His face sunk as he said, Shangqing, you are actually willing to throw away your face and attack a junior. Humph, the battlefield is not a place to talk about seniority. It is none of your business who I want to attack. Shangqing coldly snorted when he heard this. He glanced to the side and another Origin King expert from the Heavenly Puppet sect hurried over. Following beside him was a golden Vajra puppet. Clearly, it also possessed the strength of an Origin King. Shangqing, aren't you a little too old? You can't even deal with a Origin King brat. The figure mocked without any trace of politeness the moment he stepped forward. The other party snorted when he heard this. There was no need to say anything more about the previous scene. If he hadn't been careless, it would have been impossible for him to be forced back by Xiao Yan in such a miserable manner with his strength. The Origin King expert from the Heavenly Puppet sect quickly opened his mouth and ridiculed when he saw Shangqing's gloomy expression. Why don't you let my Vajra puppet help you? With him here, I believe that no matter how capable this brat is, he will not be a match for him. He is after all just a Origin King. Don't tell me. Enough! You also know that you are only dealing with a Origin King? The face of my Heavenly Puppet sect is going to be completely lost because of you. However, at this moment, the green-faced Ren Fu in the sky finally spoke with a gloomy expression. Chapter 1258. Sect Master. The expressions of Shangqing and the Heavenly Puppet sect's elder below involuntarily changed after Ren Fu's words sounded. They had even provoked an Origin Emperor to intervene in order to deal with King Yuan. Yet, they were still unable to capture the other party in one go. If they were to really dispatch another King Kong puppet to join hands and deal with Xiao Yan alone, it would be a huge joke. Even if this was the case, who would deal with Li Chengxiu, who was a 6-star origin emperor? If an origin emperor and a King Kong puppet were to join hands to deal with Xiao Yan, a mere origin king? The only people from the two sects who could face Li Chengxiu alone were the two sect leaders. However, the two of them needed to be careful of ancestor Fan Tian at all times. Once they truly fought with him, even the two of them and the King Kong puppet would not dare to underestimate him. However, if no one dealt with Xiao Yan, given the frightening fighting strength that he had displayed, there was no origin king expert within the two sects who would be able to fight one-on-one with Xiao Yan without being defeated. His frightening physical strength, powerful Genesis Qi, strange speed, and the similarly strange huge black ruler had already fully demonstrated to them that Xiao Yan's fighting strength could be said to be invincible below the origin king level. Putting aside this, from the time Xiao Yan attacked until now, nearly half of the origin king experts in the two sects had been seriously injured by Xiao Yan. In terms of the number of origin king experts, the two sects were already equal to the Burning Flame Valley. If such a battle continued, it wouldn't be beneficial to the two sects, especially since no one could deal with Xiao Yan. Ren Fu, I don't care if you want to teach your heavenly puppet sect a lesson, but it's not up to you to reprimand my subordinates. Since this human brat is so troublesome, we might as well kill him. As long as he's dead, these guys won't be a problem. At this moment, Xie Shan, who was far away from the battleground, suddenly flashed forward. As he spoke, he had already appeared in an empty space not far from Xiao Yan. His body was so quick that it caused many people present to be shocked. Li Chengxiu immediately raised the Genesis Qi in his body and blocked in front of Xiao Yan. His gaze was extremely solemn as he stared at Xie Shan, who had appeared. As a peak origin emperor, Xie Shan was likely unmatched in the extreme south except for Patriarch Burning Heaven and Ren Fu. Even Li Chengxiu wasn't confident he could last more than a few rounds against him. Xiao Yan's heart tightened a little when he saw Xie Shan, who was wearing purple robes and had a thin face. Was Xie Shan a member of the Sky Poison Dragon Scorpion Beast clan? Back then, he had sent Yu Fu to kill him precisely for this reason. If it wasn't for Xiao Ming Yuan's appearance later on, he wouldn't have known the reason behind this. Although Xie Shan was fast, Xiao Yan could see everything clearly with his tremendous spirit power. On the other hand, most of the Origin King experts present were secretly speechless when they saw Xie Shan's astonishing speed. Xiao Yan was also secretly calculating in his heart. According to Xie Shan's speed, given Xiao Yan's current cultivation, if he used the advanced Ling Yun stage's Heaven Extinction Step and the Wing Elephant art, he might be able to match Xie Shan's speed even if he didn't use the Great Tao of the Void. Xiao Yan, you have to be careful when facing this fellow. Although there are many rumors in the extreme south that this fellow's battle prowess isn't comparable to Ren Fu who possesses the Vajra puppet, in reality, he's much more terrifying than Ren Fu if they really fight. Xie Shan has been a peak origin emperor for many years. Although his cultivation hasn't broken through, his speed is already comparable to an ordinary origin sect expert. He's the true number 2 figure in the extreme south. Li Chengxiu by the side frowned as he stared at Xie Shan. His tone was a little solemn. The expression in Xiao Yan's eyes also solidified when these words were uttered. His heart was extremely surprised because of this. Was this fellow's speed already comparable to an expert from the Source Zone? Xie Shan, have you forgotten about this old man's existence? Immediately after, the space in front of Xiao Yan suddenly distorted slowly. Burning Heaven Ancestor's figure appeared along with it. At the same time, Ren Fu and the Vajra puppet appeared beside Xie Shan. Fan Tian, I'm not the only one who wants to deal with you. Don't you think so, Ren Fu? Xie Shan sneered when he heard this. In the blink of an eye, he looked at Ren Fu. If Ren Fu took action to stall Burning Heaven Ancestor, he would naturally be able to take the opportunity to kill Xiao Yan. You want me to deal with him alone? With your Vajra puppet, you don't have to worry. As long as I kill that kid, I'll immediately come and help you. Xie Shan laughed in ridicule, as if he had made a decision. Why don't we switch places? You stall him while I kill him? Are you afraid? Xie Shan narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice. The latter sneered when he heard this and asked in return, Are you not afraid of him? You know that if any one of us were to face Fan Tian alone, we would not be his match. If you were to use this opportunity to run away and leave the people of my heavenly puppet sect here, who would I find to collect this debt? You. Ran Fu clearly understood that the heavenly puppet sect and the 10,000 scorpion sect were grasshoppers on the same rope. If one of them ran away, Neither of them would be in a good situation. Therefore, Xie Shan would definitely not run away alone. However, he only wanted to use these words to express his attitude. He would not face Burning Heaven Ancestor alone, nor would he choose to give Xie Shan the chance to coldly watch from the sidelines. However, if that was the case, then today's battle would not be able to continue. Xiao Yan's appearance had already decided the direction of this battle. Xie Shan's gaze went past Burning Heaven Ancestor and stared at Xiao Yan, who was behind him. His gaze was as sharp as an arrow. If he could, he wished that he could kill Xiao Yan right now. However, Burning Heaven Ancestor was protecting him and Ren Fu was not willing to attack at all. That fellow would not take this risk for him. Of course, at the same time, Xie Shan would not choose to face Burning Heaven Ancestor alone. It was also because of this that they were even more unable to kill Xiao Yan. Then what should we do? Could it be that we are just going to waste time like this? Shang Qing's brows were tightly locked together. At this moment, there was no place for him to speak. All of the decisions were in the hands of Ran Fu and Xie Shan. For a time, all of the battles outside the southern barbaric city stopped. Although it appeared to be calm, the atmosphere was exceptionally tense. It was as though there was an invisible mountain pressing down on everyone's heads, causing quite a number of people present to be unable to breathe. The river below continued to surge, but the sound of the river churning and slapping had become much softer. Until a certain moment, the Heavenly Puppet Sect's Ran Fu finally broke the silence with his words. Everyone from the Heavenly Puppet Sect, listen up. Prepare to return to the sect. The pressure that was pressing down on everyone's heads suddenly disappeared when these words were spoken. At the same time, Xie Shan's expression suddenly changed. He immediately turned his head to look at Ran Fu. However, the latter acted as though he did not hear anything. A mocking glint flashed across his dark and cold eyes. His gaze paused on Xiao Yan and Burning Heaven Ancestor for a moment. After which, he turned around and left without turning his head back. Xie Shan's expression was gloomy when he saw Ran Fu lead the group of Heavenly Puppet Sect members and leave. He had never expected that Ran Fu would actually do such a thing. Wasn't this no different from a deserter? That damn trash. Xie Shan's face twitched as he cursed. At this moment, Burning Heaven Ancestor relaxed and laughed faintly. How is it? Does sect leader Xie Shan want to stay behind as a guest? The moment these words were spoken, Xie Shan's expression became even more indeterminate. The group of experts from the 10,000 Scorpion sect behind him also became nervous. If their 10,000 Scorpion sect were to face the Burning Flame Valley alone, they would not even be able to last for a few hours with their current fighting strength. This was something that Xie Shan, as the sect leader, was incomparably clear about. In the end, this fellow could only fiercely wave his sleeves. He turned around with a face full of resentment and fiercely cursed. After which, he led the experts from the sect and dejectedly retreated. At this point, the battle of the southern barbaric city could be considered to have come to an end. The battle had only started on the second day, but the people from the two sects had already dejectedly ran back with their tails between their legs. This matter would definitely swiftly spread throughout the extreme south and become a laughingstock. At the same time, Xiao Yan's name would also rise. Chapter 1259. They did not directly return to the Burning Flame Valley after the battle in southern Man City. Instead, they stayed in the city temporarily. After all, they had to consider the fact that many of their elders were injured and the fact that the people from the two sects had just left. They could return at any time to launch a sneak attack, so it was better to stay for a few days. After settling the little fairy doctor and Bai Hua, the group was led by Ancestor Fen Tian and escorted by a group of experts from the Burning Flame Valley. They arrived at a large hall within the city in a mighty manner. Everyone sat down and a female servant immediately served tea to them. After which, Ancestor Fen Tian's face was full of smiles as he turned his gaze to Xiao Yan. Hee little guy, it's been 3 years since we last met, yet you've already become an 8-star origin king. You really do surprise me. Once these words were uttered, some of the elders who were drinking tea in the large hall instantly became sluggish. There were even some who could not resist the shock in their hearts and spat out the tea that had already entered their mouths with a puff sound. Their faces were filled with shock. Soon after, all the gazes in the hall landed on Xiao Yan's body in unison. Although Xiao Yan was also an origin king, the aura on his body had maintained a kind of blurry state. Perhaps this was because he had just broken through. However, at the very least, other than Ancestor Fen Tian and the few upper echelon elders, No one was able to see through Xiao Yan's true cultivation. At this moment, the shock in everyone's hearts had already reached an indescribable degree after Ancestor Fentian spoke. They clearly remembered that Xiao Yan had only broken through to mid-returnance 3 years ago after entering the Burning Flame Valley. His speed had already surprised many elders, yet now, after 3 years, Xiao Yan's cultivation had already surpassed many of the experts present. Even Xian Hua, who had consumed the geocentric milk essence, was only a 7-star origin king. Becoming a 7-star origin monarch in 3 years was a cultivation speed that Xian Hua had bragged about in front of many of his old friends. However, it wasn't until today that he finally saw what a freak was. In just 3 years, Xiao Yan had gone from mid-returnance to an 8-star origin king. If he continued to grow at this speed, in a few more decades, would he not? Many people hurriedly cut off their terrifying thoughts when they thought up to there. If that really was the case, Xiao Yan was just too terrifying. This kid. Just what has he been through in the past 3 years? Xiao Yan could not help but redden when he saw how everyone present reacted in shock because of him. He hurriedly clasped his hands at the ancestor and smiled awkwardly. I was just lucky. Spurt. However, when those words were spoken, it caused many experts present to vomit blood in their hearts. Even so, he was still saying that it was a fluke. If he was serious, he would have to become an origin emperor. Some of the Burning Flame Valley's elders involuntarily glared viciously at Xiao Yan when they thought of this. On the other hand, Ancestor Fentian smiled faintly. Others might be unaware, but he was clearly aware that Xiao Yan had naturally paid an extremely great price in order to obtain such a great improvement during these 3 years. The reason was naturally the heavenly flame. Although most of the people present had witnessed Xiao Yan's terrifying strength, they had forgotten that Xiao Yan had only managed to obtain his current strength after much difficulty by putting his life on the line. It was actually quite reasonable for him to say that he was lucky. After all, no one was completely confident that they could devour a heavenly flame. Fortunately, Xiao Yan had done it. Xiao Yan's matter had come to an end. Afterwards, everyone began to discuss the recent battles that had occurred elsewhere. At the same time, they understood the situation between the Burning Flame Valley and the 2 sects through their conversations. Xiao Yan could not help but frown when he learned that the 2 sects had actually spread the flames of war to the east of the extreme south. He remembered that Luo Jin had told him that the east of the extreme south was the territory of the Yunin Pavilion. Relatively speaking, that region was a peaceful place. At the same time, it was where the extreme south truly flourished. He had never thought that the people from the 2 sects would be so bold as to spread the flames of war there. After a series of discussions and reports, the rest of the people left one after another. Only Xiao Yan and the ancestor remained in the hall. Xiao Yan, the old me needs to thank you for lending a hand in today's battle. The heart of the Burning Sky ancestor still palpitated when he recalled the battle situation outside of the southern barbaric city today. If Xiao Yan had not hurried back at the critical moment and seriously injured quite a number of origin kings, it was likely that his Burning Flame Valley would have suffered a serious injury today. Fortunately, none of that had happened. Senior is an old friend of my ancestor, so Junior should naturally take action. Moreover, I am also an honorary elder of the Burning Flame Valley. Speaking of which, I am also a part of the Burning Flame Valley. Senior, there is no need to be polite. Hearing this, the ancestor laughed out loud. Then, he came back to his senses and asked in confusion, What's wrong? Where's Xiao Xian? Didn't that fellow leave with you? Why are you the only one who came back? Only when Xiao Xian was mentioned did the expression on Xiao Yan's face change. Then, he roughly described what had happened on the way to the fire maple forest with Xiao Xian. When the ancestor found out that the person who took Xiao Xian away was actually Xiao Mingyuan, the expression on his old face could not help but change. Only then did he tell Xiao Yan that the reason Xiao Mingyuan was able to find them back then was because Xiao Mingyuan had once come to the Burning Flame Valley. After the ancestor sensed that Xiao Mingyuan did not have any ill intentions, he told the former about the whereabouts of Xiao Yan and Xiao Xian. However, he did not expect that it would actually lead to Xiao Xian being taken away. Fortunately, as long as Xiao Xian was fine, nothing else mattered. Soon after, Xiao Yan bid farewell and left the hall. Only when he left did he turn his head and see Lian Er's figure. Xiao Yan's face immediately revealed a warm smile when he saw Lian Er. In his heart, he knew that the poison within the latter's body had already been controlled. This girl, on the other hand, was initially startled when she first saw Xiao Yan. Soon after, she pounced into Xiao Yan's embrace in front of his somewhat surprised eyes. They had not met for many years, but the little girl had not forgotten Xiao Yan. The impression and feeling she had for him deep within her heart had become even deeper. Only after a long while did Lian release herself from Xiao Yan's embrace. Looking at the person who was even prettier than before, Xiao Yan could not help but feel pity for her. The girl had just grown up, yet she was already lovable. In the future, she would definitely be peerless and devastatingly beautiful. Afterwards, Xiao Yan arrived at a courtyard under Lian Er's lead. In the courtyard, Li Bingrui was sipping tea in front of a stone table in boredom. Opposite her was Bai Hua. Although she had not recovered from her injuries, she still had a leisurely appearance. He knew that the woman before him was not easy to deal with, so even though he was injured, he still accompanied her with a smile. Only when he saw Xiao Yan return did he stand up with some difficulty. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1260. In the courtyard, Xiao Yan frowned when he saw Bai Hua get up. He knew that the latter was injured, but how could she just sit there like this? However, just as Xiao Yan was about to go forward and say something, he noticed Bai Hua's gaze. The latter's cautious gaze had never moved away from Li Bingrui. He did not know what this woman's goal was, so he did not dare to be careless. Seeing this, Xiao Yan immediately understood. He took a few steps forward and helped Bai Hua into the house with a smile. Only then did he tell Bai Hua about the relationship between this woman and himself. When Bai Hua heard that Li Bingrui was actually Yi Honglian's disciple, a shocked expression immediately surfaced on her pale face. She glanced at Li Bingrui outside the door, only to discover that the latter was coldly staring at the two of them. Bai Hua's heart immediately turned cold. Only after Xiao Yan comforted her did she regain her composure. Soon after, Xiao Yan saw the fairy doctor. Due to the previous battle, the latter was still unconscious. After Xiao Yan checked her condition, he confirmed that the fairy doctor was not seriously injured. She was just too weak, and he believed that she would be fine soon. After handing the fairy doctor and Bai Hua over to Lian Er's care, Xiao Yan left the room. The instant he closed the door and turned around, he just happened to meet Li Bingrui's extremely cold eyes. Don't think that I won't kill you just because you have a master's words. Once my cultivation is sufficient, I will personally kill you. Ignoring Li Bingrui's extremely cold eyes, Xiao Yan slowly walked forward and poured himself a cup of tea. Hearing the former's words, he nodded his head with a serious expression and said, "All right, I'll wait for you to kill me." 2 days later, Xiao Yan's group and the people from the Burning Flame Valley majestically returned to the Burning Flame Valley. In the following days, the friction between the Burning Flame Valley and the two sects strangely decreased by a lot. After this battle, both sides seemed to have restrained themselves and no longer took the initiative to attack. Instead, they defended their own territories and were constantly vigilant. Under this strange silence, news of Xiao Yan's name swept through the extreme south at a lightning-like speed. After the battle in the southern barbaric city, the two sects were defeated. Xiao Yan's name resounded throughout the extreme south. With the strength of a single person forcing two sects to retreat, all kinds of rumors were everywhere. This also imperceptibly deepened Xiao Yan's resentment towards the people of the two sections. The days in the Burning Flame Valley could be considered to be peaceful. However, everyone knew that this was merely the calm before the storm. Under this kind of situation, all the upper echelons were doing their best to prepare. They clearly knew that after the silence in front of them, the undercurrents beneath the water surface would erupt in anger. At that time, it would be the time for the extreme south to truly change. At that time, the Burning Flame Valley and the two sects would start a war. Once the war started, it would be even more difficult to determine the rise and fall of the two sections. In the hall, the Burning Sky Ancestor sat on the main seat. Other than the various elders of the Burning Flame Valley, there were also many experts from various places who had joined the Burning Flame Valley later on. Xiao Yan was also in the hall at this moment. He was sitting beside the great elder, Li Chengxiu. Usually, those who sat in such a position were the important guests of the sect. However, at this moment, no one felt anything strange when Xiao Yan sat there. They even felt that it was natural. Yesterday, we received news that the two sects are reorganizing the experts within the sect. They seem to be planning to find an opportunity to make a comeback. If they come out in full force the next time, I'm afraid that it will be a decisive battle. They want to flatten my Burning Flame Valley in one fell swoop. The first elder furrowed his brows tightly. After explaining all the information he had obtained, he repeated the most important content. When he said these words, Li Chengxiu's old face carried a trace of seriousness. If the two sects really came out in full force the next time, it was likely that even the Burning Flame Valley would not be able to match up against that strength. Humph. Just let them come. Right now, my Burning Flame Valley has Elder Xiao Yan. No matter how many of them come, they will be completely annihilated. That's right. As long as Elder Xiao Yan is here, any Origin King is merely a decoration. There is nothing to be afraid of. After Li Chengxiu's words fell, some cold laughter sounded from within the Great Hall. After the battle in the southern barbaric city, Xiao Yan's fame had already spread throughout the Burning Flame Valley. He was invincible under the Origin Emperor and was treated by many as a bargaining chip for the next battle. It was as if as long as Xiao Yan was here, those so-called Origin King experts would no longer be a threat. Confidence is a good thing. However, going too far is just as bad as not going far enough. Before the real battle begins, no one can easily relax. On the main seat, the Burning Sky ancestor indifferently said a sentence. After which, he began to arrange the preparations for the upcoming battle in the Burning Flame Valley. After the rest of the people left the Great Hall, he deeply sighed. His brows were tightly knitted as he looked at Xiao Yan and Li Chengxiu below. He shook his head and slowly said, "This old man is not too worried about anything else. However, the key is the Ghost Hall." When the two words Ghost Hall were spoken, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly became much more tense. Xiao Yan and Li Chengxiu also tightly knitted their brows as grave expressions appeared on their faces. Earlier, in order to not cause panic, the Burning Sky ancestor did not say anything. However, at this moment, facing Xiao Yan and Li Chengxiu, there was naturally no need to hide something that everyone understood in their hearts. There was naturally no need to say much about the strength of the Ghost Hall. As an enormous and strange faction that caused people to tremble in fear on this continent, there was no one who would not panic and fear because of it. However, the real trouble that Xiao Yan and the rest were currently facing was precisely that group of fellows. They had long known about the contact between the Heavenly Puppet Sect and the Ghost Hall. Although they did not see the figure of the Ghost Hall during the great battle between the two sects in the past 3 years, now that the battle was approaching, once the Ghost Hall participated in the decisive battle between the Burning Flame Valley and the other two sects, everything would be hard to say. With the current foundation of the Burning Flame Valley, even if they were to put everything on the line, they would definitely not be a match for the three factions. In terms of fighting strength, the current Burning Flame Valley was already unable to produce any experts above the Origin King level. Why don't we ask Xiao Yan to ask the Union Pavilion to take action? Isn't that Pavilion Master your friend? There's no other way. I've mentioned this matter to him earlier, and he has also stated that the Union Pavilion cannot participate in the dispute between the factions of any province. Therefore, this method will not work. Li Chengxiu had originally wanted to place his hopes on the Union Pavilion. However, when Xiao Yan said these words, he could only dispel the thought in the bottom of his heart. However, immediately after, just as the Burning Heaven ancestor and Great Elder Li Chengxiu were feeling helpless and puzzled, Xiao Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. Although the method that Li Chengxiu suggested would not work, his words had coincidentally reminded him. Although the Union Pavilion cannot participate in the dispute between provinces, but perhaps I still have a way. When these words were spoken, the gazes of the two people in the hall instantly locked onto Xiao Yan. Their eyes were filled with joy as if they had survived a calamity. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1261. The next day. After instructing the little fairy doctor and the others, Xiao Yan left the Burning Flame Valley alone and quickly flew towards the northwest direction. Li Bingrui wanted to follow but was stopped by Lian Er. After interacting with each other for a few days, what was surprising was that Li Bingrui had some tender feelings for this girl. When the two of them interacted, they could actually see a rare smile on Li Bingrui's unchanging ice-cold face. Compared to the past, Xiao Yan rushed to the southwest border much faster this time. In a short few days, Xiao Yan's figure had already appeared in the Lutsong city that they had passed by on their way to the extreme south. After catching up with the Lu family's old man for a while, he continued to rush towards the southwest border. This time, Xiao Yan's goal was the ancient city of Savage Desolation. Looking at Xiao Yan's departing figure, Lu Ya's turbid old eyes had some inexplicable regret. Back then, he did not take the opportunity to befriend Xiao Yan. Who would have thought that in a short 3 years, Xiao Yan had actually grown to such a level and even formed a relationship with the once strongest faction in the extreme south, the Burning Flame Valley. That's right, it was in the past. The current Burning Flame Valley, under the combined suppression of the two great sects, was no longer as strong as before. It had already fallen from its position as the overlord of the extreme south. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Moreover, the two sects in the Burning Flame Valley had yet to fight and everything was still unknown. Therefore, it was not too late to choose a side now. Chongqing, it seems that it's time for my Lu family to make a choice. After Xiao Yan left the Lutsong city, in a short few hours, the once familiar ancient city once again appeared in his sight. Ancient city of savage desolation. I've finally arrived. Arriving outside the ancient city of savage desolation, the once familiar faces involuntarily appeared in Xiao Yan's mind. Now that he thought about it, he felt that things had remained the same but people had changed. A moment later, Xiao Yan's figure was already standing outside the Alchemist Guild. Although he had yet to enter, Xiao Yan had already clearly detected two extremely familiar auras with his current enormous spiritual strength. They were the auras of Gu Li and Qi Lin. After not seeing each other for many years, the cultivation of these two people had already reached the origin transformation realm. In the southwest border, they could be considered as extremely strong. Of course, they had also improved their alchemy skills that they were so proud of. At the same time, Gu Li and Qi Lin sensed their auras in the guild. They also sensed something. Of course, if Xiao Yan purposefully hid it, they would not have sensed it. However, there was no need for that. May I know which senior has graced my alchemist guild with your presence? I hope senior can forgive me for being late in welcoming you. Soon after, a couple of human figures successively appeared in front of Xiao Yan on the street outside of the Alchemist Association. The moment they appeared, their faces were respectful as they bowed and greeted the person in front of them. This scene also caused all the passers-by on the street to cast sidelong glances at them. The few people who had appeared on the street at this moment were all people who were rarely seen in the Alchemist Association. It was unexpected that they would actually appear together at this moment and even display such a humble attitude. This involuntarily caused everyone's gazes to gather on the black-robed, young man standing in front of them in an instant. Haha, both chairmen, it has been many years since we last met. How have you been? Soon after, an inexplicably familiar clear laughter was transmitted into the ears of Gu Li and Qi Lin. This voice caused the two of them to be inexplicably startled. However, soon after, a figure that they could not forget quietly surfaced in the depths of their minds. At the same time, the bodies of the two chairmen involuntarily trembled as they slowly lifted their heads. After which, a familiar face slowly merged with the figure that had surfaced in their minds at this moment. You are Xiao Yan. Chairman Gu Li, has everything been well during these years? Xiao Yan smiled warmly. He took 2 steps forward and gently waved his large sleeves. The few people in front of him were supported by an invisible force. Immediately, the expressions in the eyes of the few people present changed. The eyes of the 2 rank 4 alchemists behind him contained shock. Ha ha, good. Everything is good. On the other hand, ever since you left, you have not come back to visit us. I thought that you had forgotten about us 2 old bones. Seeing that the person in front of them was actually Xiao Yan, the 2 old men could not help but reveal a pleasantly surprised expression. As they spoke, their emotions became even more excited. The 2 alchemists behind them looked at the young Xiao Yan in front of them and could not help but be shocked in their hearts. They often heard the 2 chairmen mention that the Xiao Yan, whose name now shook the southern region, was once the chief alchemist of their alchemist association. They did not believe it, but now that they saw it, they could not help but have the slightest doubt. Hearing the words of the 2 in front of him, Xiao Yan could only smile embarrassedly. Honestly speaking, ever since he returned to the southern region, he had been constantly troubled by various matters and it was very difficult for him to find the time. Even if he returned to the savage ancient city now, it was still because of the battle between the Burning Flame Valley and the 2 sections. This was something that Xiao Yan was unable to explain. After both sides caught up for a while, the 2 elders originally wanted to invite Xiao Yan into the association to discuss in detail, but in the end, they were still rejected by Xiao Yan. When they saw the helpless expression on Xiao Yan's face, the 2 of them finally felt relieved. After all, they had heard a lot about the Burning Flame Valley. They were not in the situation, so it was naturally difficult for them to understand the meaning behind it. After bidding farewell to the two elders, Xiao Yan went to the Yunyin Pavilion to see Elder Xian. After another simple reminiscence, Xiao Yan arrived at the final destination of his trip to the savage ancient city, the small courtyard in the south of the city. This was the place where Luo Ao had temporarily stayed. Although Luo Ao had now returned to the central region, there were still some people who remained here, or rather, in another world. The Ginseng Spirit Tribe. Although Luo Ao had left, he could not bring them with him. The Ginseng Spirit Tribe had been in seclusion for many years and would not easily return to the central region. Relying on the jade tablet in his hand, Xiao Yan once again opened the entrance to the Ginseng Spirit World. Soon after, he lifted his foot and stepped in. In the vast world, when a certain space suddenly distorted, Qing Mu, who was in the depths of the mountain forest, instantly sensed the change. Before Luo Ao left, he had clearly told him about the approximate time he would return. However, it was a little too early now. Moreover, that aura did not belong to the Luo Ao that he was familiar with. Could it be enemy attack? Other than Luo Ao, who had a special jade tablet that allowed him to enter the Ginseng Spirit World, no one else could enter the Ginseng Spirit World so easily. Other than that, the only other way was to force his way in. This meant that an expert from the outside world had discovered the Ginseng Spirit Tribe's location and was planning to invade. Qing Mu's heart trembled, and his expression changed drastically. He quickly sent out a signal. Shortly after, several rays of light shot up into the sky from the depths of the Ginseng Spirit World. After counting them, there were 32 pillars of light standing between the heavens and the earth. Those were the 32 spiritual guards of the Ginseng Spirit Tribe. However, when Qing Mu and the 32 spiritual guards stood at the entrance where the energy fluctuation had occurred, a young man wearing a black robe slowly appeared in front of their tensed expressions. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Is there a need to make such a big fuss? Looking at the angry gazes in front of him, Xiao Yan, who had just appeared, could not help but freeze. He could not help but feel a little scared. Then, he smiled embarrassedly and put on an innocent expression. However, this scene instantly petrified all the Ginseng Spirit Tribe members present. Chapter 1262. A large group of people within the Ginseng Spirit World looked at the innocent-looking Xiao Yan in front of them. Their hearts felt somewhat helpless. Even Qing Mu's old face involuntarily revealed an embarrassed expression. As time flowed, he had forgotten that other than Luo Ao, Xiao Yan also possessed a jade plate that allowed one to enter his Ginseng Spirit World. After everyone present experienced a short period of awkwardness, Qing Mu finally walked forward with an amiable smile on his face. His gaze sized up Xiao Yan in front of him and repeatedly nodded as he said, "Not bad. Haha, I haven't seen you in so many years. Your cultivation has actually reached such a level." With Qing Mu's current cultivation, he was naturally able to tell that Xiao Yan was an 8-star origin king with a single glance. He could be considered particularly powerful among the younger generation to possess such cultivation at such a young age. After a few rounds of polite conversation, Xiao Yan noticed that Qing Feng seemed eager to give it a try. Clearly, compared to Qing Mu's boasting, he believed in actual results more. "Hee, why don't we have a fight? Let me see just how powerful you are now. I've almost become moldy after all these years of boring cultivation." Qing Mu shook his head and smiled when he saw Qing Feng act in this manner. He did not have any intention of objecting. Instead, he turned his head and returned the choice to Xiao Yan. With Xiao Yan's current strength, he was no longer that ignorant little brat from back then. It was naturally up to him to decide whether he would accept the challenge or not. Moreover, Xiao Yan no longer wished to use too many rules to restrain the current spirit Ginseng tribe. After all, an expert would only be able to obtain more training results through repeated battles. Training without moving was not a good method to become an expert, much less help him protect this enormous spirit Ginseng tribe. Xiao Yan pursed his lips and smiled when he saw this. He did not hold back. He gently pushed off the ground with the tip of his foot and shot into the air. He slowly extended his right hand and made an inviting gesture. "Good boy. You're being polite to your master. If you're being polite, I won't be. Be careful." Qing Feng roared with laughter. With a thought, Genesis Qi rapidly surged out from his body, and he appeared in front of Xiao Yan in the blink of an eye. With a flip of his hand, Emerald Genesis Qi gathered in his palm and he slammed his palm towards Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's expression did not change. He watched the palm that had already arrived in front of him. His footsteps changed and his body tilted slightly. Qing Feng's palm swept past Xiao Yan's body. Soon after, his other hand grabbed at Xiao Yan. His 5 fingers curled and pounced toward Xiao Yan's chest. Swish! However, when Qing Feng's palm passed through Xiao Yan's body, the expressions of the other spirit ginseng members present, including Qing Mu. This little guy's growth over the years isn't small at all. Qing Mu could not help but exclaim as he watched Xiao Yan easily dodge Qing Feng's consecutive attacks. At the same time, Qing Feng turned around again and looked at Xiao Yan. He let out a hearty laugh and waved his right hand as emerald light abruptly emerged in his eyes. When Qing Mu arrived in front of Xiao Yan, the ground below abruptly split open and green vines rapidly spread into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they formed an inescapable net that surrounded Xiao Yan and Qing Mu. Hehe, you're quite fast. But this time, you can't dodge. Attack! Qing Feng waved his hands and the vines were immediately under his control. Like poisonous snakes, they rapidly entangled Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan used his body to continuously dodge the attacks of the vines. At the same time, he also dealt with Qing Feng's fierce attacks with ease. No matter how Qing Feng bombarded him, Xiao Yan's golden elephant skill turned a blind eye to all the attacks. In the end, the vines completely entangled Xiao Yan. Regardless of whether it was his limbs or his head, they were all wrapped in layers of vines. His hands and feet were tied by a vine, and his entire body was arranged in the shape of the Chinese character. If it was an ordinary person, it would be difficult for him to break free under such control. How is it? Have you admitted defeat? Qing Feng grinned. Once one's body was bound by these vines, one would lose the ability to move. If one could not move, how could one fight with him? Oh, is that so? Old brother Qing Feng, these vines of yours are useless against me. However, just as Qing Feng grinned foolishly, Xiao Yan, who was wrapped in layers of vines, smiled faintly. Soon after, a ruthless look suddenly flashed across his pitch-black eyes. His hands, which were being pulled by the vines, suddenly clenched and the power elephant skill was instantly unleashed. His bound body suddenly jerked at this moment, and a dazzling golden light was immediately released from Xiao Yan's body. The light swiftly penetrated the layers of vines, and cracks began to spread. Bang! Balance soon after, the vines that were entangled around Xiao Yan's body were blown apart by Xiao Yan's power elephant skill. However, before Qing Feng could do anything, Xiao Yan's soft laughter was transmitted into his ears. Old brother Qing Feng, it's my turn to attack now. With a hearty laugh, Xiao Yan's figure suddenly appeared in front of Qing Feng. The 5 fingers of his right hand curled into a fist, and he immediately sent a punch smashing downwards. The instant the sound of an explosion rang out, Qing Feng's figure immediately retreated. At the same time, he controlled even more vines to block in front of him, forming a circular shield in order to block Xiao Yan's punch. Bang! Xiao Yan's punch smashed downwards, and the shield only lasted for a few breaths before bursting apart. Then, amidst a wave of cheers from the surrounding crowd, a punch viciously slammed into Qing Feng's chest. Powerful force instantly erupted, blasting Qing Feng's body 100 feet away. How is it? Who's the winner now? Xiao Yan descended and pursed his lips into a smile, a carefree expression on his face. Given the power he currently possessed, he was confident that he could put up a fight against anyone below the Genesis Emperor level with the 4-Saint manifestation skill. If he added Genesis Chi into the mix, even an ordinary Genesis Emperor expert would not be a problem. Heh, you're stronger than I imagined. However, it's not over yet. Let's try this move. Upon hearing this, the somewhat strained Qing Feng let out a playful chuckle. With a thought, vines broke out from the ground below and rapidly intertwined together. In the blink of an eye, they had transformed into a sturdy dark green vine club in his hand. Qing Feng frantically poured his Genesis Chi into the cane the moment it entered his hand. After a series of twirls, his body leapt into the air as he raised the cane above his head. With a howl, he swung it downwards. Xiao Yan, eat my sky-scraping club. The emerald green glow on the rattan rod became denser when it fell. The entire rattan rod also grew with the wind. The intense wind pressure caused the ground below to form quite a deep pit. By the time it arrived above Xiao Yan's head, it had transformed into an enormous long rod that was hundreds of feet long. Regardless of whether it was the pressure or the strength on it, it had reached an extremely frightening level. Xiao Yan's eyes widened. Even ordinary origin monarchs wouldn't dare rashly underestimate such an attack. He's already using his trump card. The skyscraping club is his trump card. If it lands, Xiao Yan will likely. Qingmu involuntarily frowned when he saw this. He began to feel some worry in his heart. At the same time, he quietly scolded Qing Feng for being reckless. To think that Qing Feng would act so fearlessly in the face of a friend. Just as the Genesis Qi within Qingmu's body began to circulate, he glanced at the fiery hot expression on Xiao Yan's face. A purple fire flickered within Xiao Yan's eyes as the Genesis Qi within his body began to circulate. That kid hasn't used his full strength yet. Qingmu could not help but be a little surprised when he saw this, causing the Genesis Qi in his body to slow down. From the looks of it, his worries had been a little unnecessary. Giant elephant art. A golden body suddenly appeared on the surface of Xiao Yan's body as a shocking furious cry sounded. At the same time, he suddenly waved his large hand. A fierce purple-colored flame immediately agglomerated into an incomparably large ruler in his hand. The moment he raised his head, he saw the shocking rod above his head. However, Xiao Yan was not afraid. Instead, he parted his mouth and laughed out loud. Soon after, his feet heavily stomped on the ground. The ground under his feet collapsed at the same time as the enormous fire ruler in his hand was swung out. A shockingly majestic ruler glow was formed in front of everyone's shocked eyes as it violently collided with the skyscraping rod. Boom! The moment the collision rang out, the entire world shook uncontrollably. An invisible wave of energy swept out from the point of collision. Everyone present shuddered inside, and shock filled their faces. Within a short couple of minutes, the people present were in disbelief as they watched the skyscraping rod slowly split apart under the frighteningly high temperature of the large fire ruler. Xiao Yan's arms exerted force as he swung the large fire ruler in his hand. The skyscraping rod was swiftly wrapped by the flame. The moment Qing Feng released his hand, the flame swiftly soared while the skyscraping rod began to crack an inch at a time. Finally, it transformed into a rain of fire that covered the sky and was completely incinerated. Chapter 1263. The battle in the ginseng spiritual world had ended. Everyone's hearts were filled with shock. It was hard to imagine that even though Qing Feng had used his full strength and even his trump card, he was still no match for Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's fighting strength was a little too frightening. In response, Xiao Yan blamed the heavenly flame. After all, the two of them had conflicting attributes. Qing Feng's Rattan rod just happened to be countered by Xiao Yan's heavenly flame. However, no one present was a fool. Although Xiao Yan's words did make some sense, that was only one aspect. If Xiao Yan did not rely on his own strength, even with the help of the heavenly flame, it would not have been so easy to break Qing Feng's skyscraping rod. However, all of this was no longer important. Now that the victor had been decided, the next thing to discuss was Xiao Yan's return to the ginseng spiritual world. In the depths of the mountain forest, Xiao Yan and Qingmu sat opposite each other in front of a small house with the same environment. Green tea was placed on the table in front of them. Qing Feng had a lazy expression as he sat on a rock nearby. His eyes swept around in boredom. From time to time, he would tease the ants on the ground and let out a cute laugh. "Haha, little fellow, you have grown quite a bit after not seeing you for so many years. Back then, when you were still a half-emperor, Qing Feng was already a Dou Di. Now your cultivation has far surpassed his. This old man feels gratified for you." Qingmu slowly picked up the teacup on the table, took a sip, and smiled. "Elder, thank you for your concern." Hearing this, Xiao Yan hurriedly cupped his hands towards Qingmu. The latter appeared to not care at all. He gently raised his hand to indicate that Xiao Yan did not need to be so courteous. After putting down the teacup, he opened his mouth once again and said, "This old man knows that you must have suffered a lot in the outside world. To be able to exchange for your current strength is naturally not an easy task. The blood and sweat that you have to put in is naturally not something that an ordinary person can compare with. However, this old man also believes that you did not come back to see us this time just to reminisce about the past, right?" Qingmu, who was still praising Xiao Yan a moment ago, suddenly changed the topic. At the same time, a wisp of wisdom appeared in his eyes as he smiled at Xiao Yan. Ever since Xiao Yan entered the ginseng spiritual world, although his expression did not change, there was always a trace of hesitation in his eyes. It was likely that he was waiting for the right time. Thus, Qing Mu had taken the initiative to present this opportunity to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan involuntarily smiled awkwardly when he heard this. Qing Mu's words had helped him remove the hesitation in his heart. Although Xiao Yan had thought of many methods and opportunities to open his mouth on the way here, he was unable to spit out the words that had reached his mouth after entering the ginseng spirit world. Just a moment ago, he was still considering how he should open his mouth. It was unexpected that Qing Mu had taken the initiative to deliver this opportunity to him. Since this was the case, there was naturally no need for him to hesitate. "Senior, I did come to the ginseng spiritual world this time because I have a request." Xiao Yan clenched his teeth. Only then did he open his mouth in front of Qing Mu's kind eyes. Qing Mu raised his eyebrows when these words were uttered. At the same time, Qing Feng, who was originally playing around by himself, immediately turned around. His face was serious as he looked at Xiao Yan. After which, Xiao Yan quickly continued speaking. "This junior wants to borrow people from the ginseng spiritual world." Borrow people. Hearing this, Qing Mu could not help but be surprised. With Xiao Yan's current cultivation, why would he want to borrow people from the ginseng spiritual world? After that, Xiao Yan told Qing Mu about the general situation in the southern region, as well as the upcoming battle between the Burning Flame Valley and the two sections. After hearing this, Qing Mu nodded with a look of understanding. He licked his lips and narrowed his eyes. "So that's how it is." As he spoke, Qing Mu's finger could not help but gently tap on the table as if he was considering the feasibility of this matter. Xiao Yan's face was full of sighs. He knew that the reason why the ginseng spiritual world hid from the world and did not appear was because they hoped to be far away from the chaos of the outside world. Asking them to take the risk of exposing the entire ginseng spiritual world to support the Burning Flame Valley because of his words was somewhat unrealistic. However, even though he knew that this might be the result, Xiao Yan still wanted to give it a try. "Clan leader, let's borrow it. After all, Brother Xiao Yan has helped our ginseng spiritual world before. He can be said to be our clan's savior. Moreover, our ginseng spiritual world has indeed hidden from the world for too long. Instead of hiding forever like this, I believe that it is better to come out and fight. Even if the identity of our clan is exposed, we must let the world know that our ginseng spiritual world is not to be trifled with." From the side, Qing Feng strode forward and persuaded Qing Mu with an unruly expression. He also had deep feelings for Xiao Yan. If he could, he would definitely not stand by and do nothing. Moreover, he had indeed yearned for the outside world for a long time. Seeing Qing Feng act like this, Xiao Yan also took the initiative to cast a grateful gaze at the latter. The two of them smiled at each other. At the same time, their gazes gathered on Qing Mu as if they were waiting for his decision. "Hey, you brat! You actually said so much in order to persuade this old man. What? When did this old man say that he was against it? Xiao Yan is our ginseng spiritual world savior. This old man remembers this point more clearly than you. We can choose not to help others, but as long as Xiao Yan asks, our ginseng spiritual world must step forward." Quickly following this, Qing Mu curled his lips and scolded with a face that was not in a good mood. Seeing this, Xiao Yan and Xiao Yan laughed heartily. Xiao Yan hurriedly stood up and bowed to Qing Mu in front of him. The old man gently waved his sleeves and slowly stood up from the chair. His gaze eyed the mountain forest in the distance and slowly said, "After so many years, it is time to let the people of the outside world know that our ginseng spiritual world still exists on this continent." Behind him, Xiao Yan and Qing Feng once again smiled. The former involuntarily exhaled a long breath of air. The main objective of this trip had finally been successfully completed. In that case, all that was left was to gather everyone and prepare to return. In response to Xiao Yan's invitation, Qing Mu agreed to temporarily lend the 32 spirit guards of the ginseng spiritual world to him. However, as the last guardian of the ginseng spiritual world, Qing Mu could not go to the extreme south with him. After all, the ginseng spiritual world still needed someone to protect it at all times. Being able to lend the 32 spirit guards to him could already be considered extremely benevolent. Xiao Yan was naturally not dissatisfied with this. The 32 spirit guards of the ginseng spiritual world were all source kings now, and many of them were high-level source kings. In the past, such a large group would have been enough to sweep through most of the forces in the extreme south. Being able to lend them to him, how could he be dissatisfied? He was naturally extremely excited. Chapter 1264. After borrowing these people, Xiao Yan naturally had to return. He believed that with the help of the 32 spiritual guards from the Ginseng spiritual tribe, the overall strength of the Burning Flame Valley in the battle with the two sects would definitely increase greatly. At that time, even if the people from the Ghost Hall appeared, the pressure would be reduced by a lot. This time, the Ginseng spiritual tribe had done Xiao Yan a great favor. When they came, they were alone. When they left, they formed a mighty army. This scene caused quite a number of people in the city to be shocked. However, just as Xiao Yan and the others were preparing to leave the ancient city, a somewhat familiar energy fluctuation came from afar and attracted Xiao Yan's gaze. That is, sensing the energy fluctuation, Xiao Yan's expression could not help but be slightly startled. After hesitating for a while, he seemed to have recalled something in his mind. His eyes rotated and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Behind him, Qing Feng could not help but ask with a suspicious face when he saw the expression on Xiao Yan's face. Even the faces of the people behind him were filled with curiosity. Haha, perhaps, the time for us to return will be delayed for a while. Xiao Yan smiled. After which, he led the group and flew in a certain direction outside the ancient city. In a short moment, this group arrived in front of a majestic mountain peak. Looking at the majestic mountain peak that towered into the clouds in front of them, everyone present could not help but raise their eyebrows. Their eyes revealed some surprise. There were thunderclouds lingering on the mountain peak. Waves of thunder continued to roar. The surroundings of the mountain were surrounded by thunderbolts. As they flickered continuously, it was as though a lightning dragon was lingering on it. On the mountain wall, there were 3 large words that contained a faint pressure that were carved in a dragon-like manner. Gray Mountain. This mountain peak was the entrance to the lightning pool in the empty space of the ancient city. Back then, Xiao Yan had also used the lightning pool in the empty space of the Gray Mountain to break through his cultivation. It was unexpected that he would once again come here today. The 3 large words that contained the pressure of a Do Di on the mountain wall were currently ordinary in Xiao Yan's eyes. The so-called elite Do Di had become a thing of the past many years ago. Who would have thought that Xiao Yan, who even a bandit had difficulty resisting back then, had now become such an expert? It was not an exaggeration to say that things remained the same, but people had changed. Xiao Yan smiled brightly as he raised his head to look at the mountain peak in front of him. His mind involuntarily recalled the past, especially Gu Yu. If Gu Yu had not protected him in the past, it was likely that Xiao Yan would not have been able to survive. A long while later, Xiao Yan withdrew his mind. His eyes once again focused on the thunderclouds above his head. He wondered just how much his cultivation would increase if he were to enter the lightning pool in the empty space. Looking at the situation on the lightning mountain, it was obvious that the lightning pool in the empty space had yet to open. If it had been in the past, even if the lightning pool had been opened, Xiao Yan would not have been able to enter it without the help of the empty space lightning pool. Of course, that was already in the past. With Xiao Yan's current cultivation and the help of the Great Way of the Void, it was naturally not a problem for him to enter the lightning pool in the empty space. After a simple discussion, the people from the Ginseng spirit tribe did not intend to enter the lightning pool in the empty space. They had just withdrawn from a long period of training and had only left the Ginseng spirit world today. How could they be willing to return to their repetitive training without doing anything? Hence, only Xiao Yan was able to enter the lightning pool in the end. The latter expressed their understanding toward this and did not say anything else. Endless training would indeed cause one's mental state to crack. Forget about them, even if it was Xiao Yan himself, it was likely that he would not be able to endure it. Just think about it. Even Xiao Yan felt incomparably tired from these 3 years of training, much less over 10 years or even decades of bitter training by them. This time around, Xiao Yan directly climbed to the top of the Gray Mountain. He looked at the large thunderclouds above his head and a fiery hot expression gradually surged into his eyes. A thought passed through his heart and the Great Way of the Void was immediately agglomerated and formed. It transformed into a tent in the space in front of him. Under Xiao Yan's control, a special aura spread from it. Following the slow distortion of the Great Way of the Void within the tent, a strange swirl also surfaced. Xiao Yan finally smiled with satisfaction when he saw this. He was just about to step into it when an unexpected change occurred the next moment. Whoosh! Following the appearance of a thunderous explosion, A dark black thunderbolt suddenly rushed out from within the dark black tent. It was just like a poisonous snake as it swiftly charged toward Xiao Yan. The thunderbolt's strength on it had reached an exceptionally frightening level. The sudden unexpected change in the arena caused the expressions of quite a number of people below to change. Xiao Yan, on the other hand, remained calm. Not only did he not attempt to block the thunderbolt when it struck over, he instead rotated his hand. A fierce flame immediately spat out from his palm. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into an enormous fire swirl that forcefully swallowed the lightning strength into his body. Only after that did he slowly lift his foot and stride into it. Xiao Yan entered the lightning pool again with ease. Although he had not seen it for many years, the impression of it was still fresh in his mind. With his current cultivation, Xiao Yan arrived at the core of the lightning pool in a short period of time. Vast thunderbolts were as numerous as the hairs on a cow. The moment Xiao Yan paused, countless thunderbolts quickly gathered around him and turned into a torrent of thunderbolts that rushed towards him as if they were declaring their sovereignty. Seeing this scene, he could not help but frown. These thunderbolts alone were not a problem, but if they swarmed together, even he would not be able to deal with them easily. Immediately after, Xiao Yan flicked his finger. With a flash of light, the Northern King instantly appeared in front of him and blocked the violent impact of the thunderbolt power. From Xiao Yan's point of view, all the thunderbolts that rushed towards him seemed to have entered a bottomless abyss. The moment they touched the Northern King's body, they were forcefully absorbed. Then, after a slight flicker on the surface of the Northern King's body, they were all refined. The so-called thunderbolt power was not even worth mentioning in front of the Northern King. Without bothering about Gu Bei Wang, Xiao Yan randomly found a place to sit down. After the aura in his body gradually stabilized, he activated the flame mantra chi method and began to wantonly absorb all the thunderbolt power in the lightning pool. As the flame mantra chi method circulated, the thunderbolt power that came into contact with his body was instantly absorbed into his body. After being refined by the heavenly flame and the circulation of the chi method, it turned into a pure energy that flowed into the vortex. At the same time, a huge energy vortex slowly formed above Xiao Yan's head. A ferocious suction force spread out from it and began to wildly devour the thunderbolt power in the lightning pool. Under this continuous devouring and refining, Xiao Yan's aura gradually rose. Chapter 1265. At the same time that Xiao Yan entered the lightning pool, chaos was about to rise in the outside world. In the extreme south, within the heavenly puppet sect, Zhongming was currently leaning on the main seat. His right index finger was gently tapping the armrest as thoughts continuously spun in his mind. In half a month's time, relying on the support of medicinal pills, the experts of the sect that were heavily injured by Xiao Yan had completely recovered. The experts that were sent out from various places had also been called back to the sect. Everyone was waiting for the day of the decisive battle with the Burning Flame Valley. TSK 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 TSK. Sect Master is in a good mood. You are actually still resting here. Could it be that you do not plan to attack the Burning Flame Valley? A strange laughter suddenly sounded in the empty hall. Renfu raised his eyelids slightly and saw a ball of black fog swiftly flying across the hall. The laughter was so sinister that it made one want to vomit. The pair of blood-red eyes in the black fog caused one's entire body to feel a chill. However, he had already gotten used to such a scene over the past few years. Even if the latter appeared in front of him, there was nothing to be worried about. Can't you tell whether I will attack or not? This time, in order to completely eradicate the Burning Flame Valley's influence in the extreme south, I have already called back all the experts that were sent out earlier. It can be said that everything is prepared. The only thing that is lacking is the response from the group of bastards from the 10,000 Scorpion sect. Sitting up, Ranfu rubbed his face to make himself more awake. When he mentioned the 10,000 Scorpion sect, a sinister expression involuntarily flashed across his eyes. Ever since the last battle, although the two sects had met, they appeared to be unconcerned on the surface. The 10,000 Scorpion sect had also agreed to his Heavenly Puppet sect's agreement. However, until now, Xieshan still had not given an accurate response. So, I think that you can add another condition to your agreement with me. You want to take a mile after taking an inch? Just as Ranfu's voice fell, the ball of black fog instantly appeared in front of him like a ghost. A pair of scarlet eyes stared intently at him. The killing intent within was not concealed at all. Humph! Help me kill Xieshan. This is not too much, right? Ignoring the murderous intent in the eyes of the person in front of him, Ren Gue coldly snorted. His voice was somewhat low as he slowly spoke. TSK, 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 TSK. That is your problem. We only promised you the geocentric body transformation milk. After eliminating the burning flame valley, we will obtain Xiao Yan. As for you, you will obtain the geocentric body transformation milk that you want. As for the rest, we will not be responsible. A wave of disdainful laughter was immediately emitted from the black fog upon hearing this. When these words reached Ren Fu's ears, it caused the latter's face to instantly turn ashen. Half of his face involuntarily twitched. Just as he was about to open his mouth to defend himself, the word spat out by the person in front of him caused his body to instantly stiffen. Remember, you are not qualified to discuss conditions with my ghost palace. When he saw that Ren Fu had stopped moving, the human figure covered by the black fog immediately let out a strange laugh. His figure gradually drifted away. When that ghost-like figure had completely disappeared, only Ren Fu, whose expression was extremely ugly, was left in the hall, as well as the cold laughter that faintly reverberated in the air. Outside of the savage ancient city, on Grey Mountain, within the lightning pool in the void. In the depths of the lightning pool, after Xiao Yan refined the last bolt of lightning energy that the flame mantra had absorbed into his body, a pair of tightly shut eyes slowly opened. The corners of his mouth lifted into a satisfied smile. After this period of crazy devouring, the lightning energy had already been completely refined into pure energy within his body. Xiao Yan had also used this opportunity to make another breakthrough in his cultivation. Until just now, his cultivation had already stepped into the peak of the Origin King realm. He was only a step away from the Origin Emperor realm. Huff! Feeling the abundant energy within his body, Xiao Yan could not help but smile in disappointment. After which he was about to stand up. However, the instant Xiao Yan raised his head, the scene in front of him caused him to immediately freeze. The expression on his face also gradually turned into a stunned expression. Xiao Yan looked around him. The lightning pool, which was originally filled with lightning strength, was no longer able to see any lightning at this moment. After Xiao Yan used his spiritual strength to investigate, he was stunned to discover that the lightning strength within the lightning pool had been completely absorbed. The so-called lightning pool had become a space of nothingness. It was likely that it would not be able to continue producing lightning energy for many years to come. And the person who had caused all of this to happen now wanted to obediently leave this place. Xiao Yan rubbed his nose somewhat awkwardly. Only then did he look at the North King to the side. When his gaze landed on the latter's body, his expression instantly changed. If one were to say who had completely absorbed the lightning energy within the lightning pool, it would probably be the North King. At this moment, the lightning strength lingering over the surface of the Northern King's body had become even denser and overbearing after absorbing the lightning strength. The luster of the purple color on its body had become even deeper. Lightning symbols surfaced all over its body. If one were to look carefully, one would find that those symbols were faintly wiggling like living creatures. The thing that caused Xiao Yan to be most shocked was that there were 5 additional silver-colored dragon scales between the brows of the Northern King. The North King's transformation caused Xiao Yan's heart to tremble. It was true that the North King's body had come from the ancient Void Dragon clan. When he was alive, he had indeed possessed dragon scales. However, after being refined by the heavenly flame, the dragon scales had already fused with his body. His body should be smooth and smooth now, but the appearance of these dragon scales seemed to vaguely confirm something. But no matter what, the North King's strength had greatly increased after entering the lightning pool. There was no need to doubt this point. At this moment, the pressure from the lightning energy on the North King's body made even Xiao Yan shiver inwardly. There was no doubt that the North King's battle prowess had already reached the Origin King level. This was a pleasant surprise. Of course, the thing that made Xiao Yan feel the most apologetic was that the lightning energy within the lightning pool had been accumulated for an unknown number of years. Now, it had all been used by Xiao Yan. If the people from the ancient wasteland city were to know of this, it was likely that they would wish to skin him alive. Qing Feng and the others had already become impatient after exiting the lightning pool. Xiao Yan could only smile in an embarrassed manner in the face of this. In the blink of an eye, he noticed the 3 large words Gulei Mountain, that contained the pressure of a Do-D. A thought immediately passed through his heart. Since he was the one who had caused the lightning within this lightning pool to be exhausted, he should at least take out some compensation. I will use this as a temporary compensation. Xiao Yan softly laughed. Immediately, He borrowed his own enormous spiritual strength and his current strength at the peak of the Yuan King class to leave behind a will of his on Gulei Mountain. This was likely sufficient for quite a number of people to use to comprehend. Although this will was not as effective as the lightning strength, one would be able to gain much more from comprehending it compared to the lightning pool in the empty realm once one comprehended it. Soon after, Xiao Yan finished doing all this. Only then did he understand from Qing Feng that it had been over half a month since he had entered the lightning pool. If it was not because the lightning energy within the lightning pool had been completely absorbed, it was likely that he would have continued inside at this moment. After recovering, Xiao Yan's heart suddenly tightened when he thought of the big battle between the Burning Flame Valley and the two sects. His expression changed rapidly as he hurriedly let out a low cry from his mouth. He led this group of people and swiftly flew towards the extreme south at lightning speed. Chapter 1266. Outside the Burning Flame Valley in the extreme south. The vast and mighty army of the two sects gathered outside the Burning Flame Valley like a large dark cloud. Sunlight scattered down and a large shadow enveloped the mountain top of the Burning Flame Valley. All the disciples in the valley stood up at this moment. Their eyes were filled with surprise as they stared at the distant sky. The sunlight was hidden, and what appeared in front of them was a large group of densely packed human figures that could not be seen clearly. Although they were unable to see just who these people were, all the disciples on the mountain understood that the Burning Flame Valley was likely going to face a great calamity today. The Burning Sky Ancestor and a group of experts from the valley stood on a spacious square on the mountain top. The little fairy doctor and the rest were also present. At this moment, a silver puppet stood beside the little fairy doctor. This was the puppet that Xiao Yan had obtained when he saved the people from the Fang clan. Before they left, Xiao Yan had handed it to the little fairy doctor. At this moment, the surrounding experts could not help but reveal an envious expression in their eyes when they saw this. An Origin King-level puppet was given away just like that. Even they did not have the ability to do such a thing. Has it finally come? The Burning Sky Ancestor narrowed his old eyes. His eyes stared intently at the vast and mighty army outside the Burning Flame Valley. He opened his mouth slightly and spoke in a deep voice. This is a true decisive battle. The elites of the two sects have all gathered. All the experts who were sent out have been summoned back. Even the Origin Realm and Origin Transformation Realm deacons have been called over. They really do plan on bathing my Burning Flame Valley in blood. A grave expression also surfaced on Li Chengxiu's face. He had been busy investigating the movements of the two sects over the past few days. Therefore, he was exceptionally clear about these matters. As soon as these words were spoken, the other people at the side also nodded with a solemn expression. Although they knew that this day would come sooner or later, it was still difficult for their hearts to calm down before the battle. After all, this battle was not only related to the life and death of countless people, but it was also related to the situation in the extreme south. In the end, no matter which side won, the outcome would be tragic. Valley Chief, Elder Xiao Yan, why is he not here? Suddenly, someone seemed to have discovered that something was amiss. Recently, Xiao Yan, who had often accompanied the Burning Sky Ancestor, had disappeared without a trace. Could it be? Quite a few people secretly became nervous when they thought of a certain possibility. If Xiao Yan had really fled before the battle, would it not be a huge blow to the Burning Flame Valley? Why? Do you not even have the courage to fight when he is not here? Hearing this, Ancestor Scorching Sky's expression suddenly turned cold as he sneered. Everyone's expressions immediately changed after these words were spoken. Only then did they hurriedly deny it. However, this caused Ancestor Fention to coldly laugh in his heart. In the end, these fellows were still doing this for their own benefits. When they saw that the person who could block the spear for them was not present, they revealed such an expression. Relax, he will return. Seemingly in order to comfort these fellows, the Burning Sky Ancestor smiled and said these words. Although he did not have any basis, the old man still believed in his heart that Xiao Yan would definitely be able to rush back in time. At that time, there might be a turning point in this big battle that seemed impossible to win. Ha 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 ha. Fention, your Burning Flame Valley has sat in the position of the overlord of the extreme south for too long. Now, it is time for a change of owner. At this moment, Ren Fu's familiar voice was once again transmitted over from outside of the Burning Flame Valley. His laughter contained some arrogance and overbearingness. Although the big battle between the two parties had yet to begin, he seemed to have already seen the destined ending of the Burning Flame Valley. Ranfu, it is too early for you to be happy. It is still unknown just who will emerge victorious. The burning sky ancestor slowly stepped forward and spoke in a faint voice. After which, he raised both of his hands. His 10 fingers moved together and a seal was formed. At the same time, numerous white lights swiftly lingered over the entire mountain of the burning flame valley. Soon after, it transformed into a cream-white energy light barrier that covered the entire burning flame valley. This was the great sect protecting formation of the burning flame valley, the Great Star Plate Formation. This was the item that the burning flame valley had exchanged for from Luo Jin's father by using the Earth Core Body Transformation Milk. Although it was only a derivative of the Greater One Star Plate, the Great Star Plate Formation was a genuine Grade 7 formation. The energy barrier formed by the formation plate was naturally extraordinary. Not only could it be used as a defense, it could even reflect a portion of the opponent's attacks. Even with the foundations of these two great sects, it was destined that it would not be an easy task to break the Great Star Plate Formation. This is the sect protecting formation of the Burning Flame Valley. Ranfu involuntarily frowned when he sensed the powerful aura from the energy barrier. Given his eyesight, he was naturally able to see that this formation was extraordinary. However, since things had already developed to such a stage, they no longer had any other choice other than to forcefully break the formation. Following the orders of the two sect masters, the experts on both sides immediately released the powerful Genesis Chi in their bodies. Soon after, they leapt into the air, transforming into streaks of light that shot straight towards the array before them. Boom 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 boom. An earth-shaking explosive sound suddenly sounded at this moment. Numerous powerful Do skills repeatedly smashed onto the energy barrier, forming circular energy ripples. At the same time, quite a number of energy was also reflected. In an instant, it caused the experts from the two sects who were forcefully attacking to suffer. There were even some who were seriously injured under this wild and indiscriminate bombardment. At the same time, the energy barrier, which was originally as stable as a mountain, also began to tremble slightly. The explosions outside the burning flame valley continued for an unknown period of time. Only at a certain moment did Ranfu and Xie Shan, the sect leaders of the two sects, finally take action together. Under their combined attacks, the astral disk formation was finally forcefully broken. Even though this was the case, the densely packed figures that originally stood in the sky had decreased by a lot. Countless returnants and returnance experts had died from the bombardment. There were even a few origin kings who were heavily injured. Even the most famous puppet of the Heavenly Puppet sect had been damaged to a certain extent. Although the battle had yet to officially begin, the people from the two sects had already suffered quite a lot in order to break through the formation. This caused the expressions of Ranfu and Xie Shan to change, but it also boosted the morale of the many people in the Burning Flame Valley. Humph, Fun Tian, you will definitely pay a painful price for this. Ranfu coldly snorted. His body shook as the powerful presence of a 7-star origin emperor immediately radiated from his body. With a wave of his hand, Jin Gangshi immediately appeared by his side. Xie Shan also unleashed the vast energy within his body at the same time. His eyes flickered with light as he stared at Ancestor Fun Tian. Ha ha ha, Ranfu, Xie Shan, I've been waiting for this day for a very long time. I knew that a battle between the three of us would happen sooner or later. Today, let me see just how strong you are. Ancestor Fun Tian laughed loudly when he heard this. Genesis Chi surged from his body as his old body appeared in the space before Ranfu and Xie Shan in the blink of an eye. The moment he raised his head, an invisible vast pressure immediately swept out from his body, blocking the pressure from the experts of the two sections. It even caused the expressions of the two to change. Ancestor Scorching Heaven was indeed worthy of being an expert of the Origin Ancestor realm. Such a terrifying aura and pressure was truly terrifying. Chapter 1267. At the same time that the big battle between the Burning Flame Valley and the experts from the two sects officially began, Xiao Yan was leading a large group of people behind him as they hurried to the location of the Burning Flame Valley. Ever since Xiao Yan had left the lightning pool in the empty realm and learned that he had already trained for half a month, he did not dare to delay for even a moment along the way. In merely 2 days, they had already hurried all the way from the savage ancient city to the extreme south. From their current position, it was likely that they would reach the Burning Flame Valley in less than 2 hours. Although this was the case, Xiao Yan and the rest became even more anxious when they heard that the two sects had challenged the Burning Flame Valley to a decisive battle. In the end, Xiao Yan left the group first after explaining the general direction of the Burning Flame Valley to Qing Feng. He used the Heaven Extinction Step and Wing Elephant art at full speed in hopes of reaching the Burning Flame Valley before the battle between the two sects in the Burning Flame Valley began. At the same time, the battle between the Burning Flame Valley and the two sects was also intense. On the mountainside, the Origin and Origin Transformation experts from both sides were basically engaged in a chaotic battle. Cries of battle constantly rang out as Genesis Chi shot out. Figures were everywhere and an expert would fall from the mountain from time to time. They were either heavily injured or dead. Apart from that, the distant horizon was roughly divided into 3 battle circles. The Origin Kings from both sides were naturally engaged in a chaotic battle. Although the Burning Flame Valley did not have the advantage in numbers, they had the advantage in terms of strength. Coupled with the explosive power of their fire attribute Chi methods and Do skills, the battle between the two sides was like a raging fire for a time. The same was true for the battle between the Origin Kings. The Burning Flame Valley had a total of 3 Origin Kings. Other than First Elder Li Chengxiu, who was a 6-star Origin King, the other 2 were 4-star Origin Kings. Their strength could not be underestimated. Other than the Origin Kings from the Heavenly Puppet Sect and the 10,000 Scorpion Sect, there was also a Vajra Puppet. The 3 of them were facing 3 Origin Kings at the same time, so the pressure they faced was naturally not small. Apart from First Elder Li Chengxiu, who had the opportunity to catch his breath, the other 2 were firmly suppressed and would not be able to last for long. Out of the entire battle, the battle between Ancestor Fan Tian and Ren Gue, Xie Shan, was naturally the most shocking. Ren Gue wielded a golden blade. Genesis Chi was poured into it as he swung his hands rapidly, easily ripping apart the invisible space around him. It was difficult to imagine how a person would be instantly cleaved into 2 if the blade landed on them. On the other side, Xie Shan wielded a strange bone chain that was covered in spikes. One end was a short sword, while the other was a pitch-black sickle. Under his control, the chain continuously twisted like a living creature, twisting and turning in the air several times. When Ancestor Fan Tian blocked Ren Gue's attack, the chain would suddenly reach out from behind him and viciously slash at Ancestor Fan Tian's throat. If not for his powerful Origin Ancestor cultivation, Ancestor Fan Tian would have been killed by the combined attacks of the 2. Of course, other than the ferocious attacks of the 2, the Vajra Puppet's attacks were the most serious. The Vajra Puppet's attacks were ferocious and domineering. Even Ancestor Fan Tian would find it difficult to endure a single punch from it, let alone the constant interference from Ren Gue and Xie Shan. Destroying the puppet would be extremely difficult. Clang! A few blades descended in succession, but they were all caught by Ancestor Fan Tian with his bare hands. This time, he even relied on his ferocious flame power to forcefully melt the blade of the large blade. Just as Ren Gue's expression changed drastically, Ancestor Fan Tian suddenly stepped forward. His palm landed on Ren Gue's chest. As blood spurted out, a chill surged from his back once again. As he dodged to the side, a short sword flew close to Ancestor Fan Tian's ear. The sharp sound of it tearing through the air even caused the flesh on his old face to involuntarily twitch. Soon after, the Vajra puppet attacked once again. Ancestor Fan Tian immediately retreated. When Xie Shan arrived in a flash, he turned around and sent the Vajra puppet flying. Ancestor Fan Tian also used this opportunity to stop his body. He looked at the 3 of them with some difficulty. Humph, Ren Gue, you're still too weak in the end. If we were to fight one-on-one, I'm afraid that you won't even be able to last 10 moves from me. Ancestor Fan Tian laughed coldly as he gently gasped for breath. Humph. Fan Tian, I admit that I'm inferior to you. However, today, your Burning Flame Valley is destined to flow with rivers of blood. Although this fellow did not feel good after receiving a palm from Ancestor Fan Tian, he was not seriously injured. As his voice sounded, his gaze also landed on the experts from both sides who were fighting intensely below. He involuntarily parted his mouth and the smile on the corner of his mouth became increasingly ferocious. Haha, you want to destroy my Burning Flame Valley with just this level of strength? Ancestor Fan Tian involuntarily laughed coldly when he heard this. However, the emotions at the bottom of his heart also became solemn. He could imagine that this fellow was not referring to the experts present. If it was just these people, wanting to take down the Burning Flame Valley was indeed an extremely difficult matter. However, if it was them... Hee. Fan Tian, I have specially prepared a gift for you today. I can admit that I'm not your match. I can also admit that it is impossible to easily destroy the Burning Flame Valley with just these people. However, if I were to take out another origin ancestor, or a few origin emperors. Hall Master Xiao, please. Ranfu slowly wiped away the traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. However, the smile on his face was ferocious. Just as his words sounded, a large amount of black fog suddenly surged outside of the burning flame valley behind the battle circle of both parties. Soon after, a few human figures whose bodies were covered by the black fog appeared. Ghost Palace. At the same time, Ancestor Scorching Heaven's face turned completely gloomy. These things that were neither human nor ghost had shown themselves in the end. Xiao Yan, if you still don't return, it will really be troublesome. At the same time that he felt solemn in his heart, Ancestor Fentian could not help but secretly say in his heart. He had placed all his hopes on Xiao Yan. If he still did not return, just the people in his burning flame valley would be unable to contend against him. Ancestor Fentian. Where is Xiao Yan? Within the black fog, a pair of scarlet eyes first swept in all directions. However, they did not discover Xiao Yan's figure. This involuntarily caused them to feel a little surprised. According to the news, Xiao Yan should indeed be in the burning flame valley. However, the current situation seemed to be contrary to their plans. Haha, why? Did the few of you miss me so much? It was also at this moment that a familiar clear laughter suddenly sounded in the sky. In almost an instant, a familiar figure wearing black robes had already appeared in the sky. A smile hung from the corner of his mouth as he stared at the few people from Ghost Palace with a dense expression. Chapter 1268. The expressions on everyone's faces could not help but be startled when they saw the black-robed young man who had suddenly appeared in front of everyone's line of sight. Soon after, when everyone from both sides regained their senses, two different expressions shockingly surfaced on everyone's faces. The faces of those from the burning flame valley were naturally filled with wild joy when they saw Xiao Yan's return. They had personally witnessed the latter's frightening fighting strength. As long as Xiao Yan was present, the so-called Origin King experts from the two sects were simply useless. On the contrary, when the two sects saw Xiao Yan appear, everyone's faces involuntarily revealed a terrified expression. The scene from a month ago once again surfaced in their minds. Compared to the people from the burning flame valley, they undoubtedly had a greater understanding of Xiao Yan's frightening fighting strength. After all, they had personally experienced it. To them, it was already extremely fortunate to be able to survive under Xiao Yan's heavy hammer. How would they dare to face him again? Now that they saw the return of this killing god, everyone's bodies unconsciously retreated. This comical scene caused many experts from the burning flame valley to reveal mocking expressions on their faces. At the same time, a smile surfaced on the old face of the burning sky ancestor who was high up in the sky when he saw Xiao Yan's return. With Xiao Yan's return, the pressure in his heart had naturally decreased a little. At the very least, he had some confidence in his heart when he faced these fellows from the Ghost Hall. Even though he did not know why, as long as Xiao Yan was present, he would feel that there was still a chance for everything to turn around. People like you will always have this hateful appearance that is neither human nor ghost. If I don't get rid of all of you, I'm afraid that this continent will never be peaceful. Xiao Yan clenched his hand in the air and a large pitch-black ruler immediately appeared in his hand. At the same time, a sharp aura also spread out from within his body, forming a tornado around him that swept outwards. Humph, sharp-tongued brat. If it was not for your sudden attack the last time, the burning flame valley would have been destroyed long ago. However, this time around, there will not be so many accidents. Ranfu let out a cold snort upon seeing this. His eyes swept towards the people from the Ghost Hall. This time around, Xiao Yan would naturally not need to worry as long as they were present. He did not even need to worry about Ancestor Fentian. As for the experts from the burning flame valley, it would naturally be difficult for them to survive once he attacked. However, the expert from the Ghost Hall by the side suddenly let out a surprised cry just as Rangui's voice sounded. The scarlet eyes that landed on Xiao Yan flickered slightly as he said in a surprised voice, "What are you talking about? 9-star Origin King? Didn't you say that you're an 8-star Origin King? How come it's only been a month? Oh, all of you have really investigated me thoroughly. I was indeed an 8-star Origin King a month ago. However, that was a month ago. Now, I am at the peak of the Origin King realm." An extremely powerful aura suddenly swept out of Xiao Yan's body the moment his voice sounded. The powerful aura caused the expressions of quite a number of people present to change. Even Ren Tian involuntarily widened his eyes. This aura might not be able to threaten him, but Xiao Yan had actually raised his cultivation from an 8-star Origin King to the peak of the Origin King class within a month. This training speed was a little too frightening. Xiao Yan's expression changed when he heard this. Good brat, you have actually broken through again. It was only at this moment that the Burning Sky ancestor sensed the change in Xiao Yan's aura. He could not help but laugh out loud, and his face was filled with joy. Now, no matter who broke through in the Burning Flame Valley, it was a great thing. Not to mention that Xiao Yan's cultivation had broken through to the peak of the Origin King realm. If combined with his powerful fighting strength, he might even be able to fight against an Origin King expert. This was another great help. I'm sorry, that's why I only came back now. Fortunately, nothing happened to everyone. Hearing the words of the Burning Sky ancestor, Xiao Yan's face could not help but reveal some apologetic expression. The former laughed and waved his hand, looking as if he did not care at all. On the other hand, the hallmaster of the Ghost Hall snorted coldly and sneered, "It's just a breakthrough to the peak of the Origin King realm. The result will be the same no matter what. Today, you must return with us no matter what." The moment his voice fell, the body under the black fog suddenly shook, and a terrifying aura immediately swept out in all directions. At the same time, the black fog dissipated, revealing a figure wearing a black robe and a mask. The most shocking thing was that the strength of the aura that swept out from this person's body had surpassed that of an Origin King expert. This fellow was shockingly another Origin Ancestor level expert. Behind him, the other 2 experts from the Ghost Hall also released the aura within their bodies at the same time. They were 2 Origin Kings, 1 Origin Ancestor and 2 Origin Emperors. Once such a lineup joined the groups of the 2 sects, it would be a huge blow to the Burning Flame Valley. TSKSK, Xiao Yan, Fun Tian, today is the day of your death. A sharp strange laughter was once again emitted from Ren Fu's mouth. Soon after, a thought passed through his heart and the Vajra puppet immediately flashed and arrived in front of Xiao Yan. Beside him, Xie Shan looked at the ferocious smile on Ren Fu's face in front of him. The chill in his heart became even denser. The corner of his eyes cautiously swept over the few people from the Ghost Hall. The emotion in his heart tightened slightly. He had never heard of anything related to the Ghost Hall. Even he did not expect that this Ren Fu would actually be involved with the people from the Ghost Hall. His heart was extremely afraid of this group of people who were neither human nor ghost. However, Ren Fu had deliberately hidden it and only took it out today. This intention was likely not only aimed at the Burning Flame Valley. When he thought of this, an extremely obscure cold glint involuntarily flashed across the depths of Xie Shan's eyes when he looked at Ren Fu. "Cuckoo, I'm afraid that you don't have such a big appetite if you want to eat me." Xiao Yan's face did not show any fear when he saw the Vajra puppet that had arrived in front of him. Instead, he looked at this Vajra puppet's body in a somewhat strange manner. A thought swiftly circulated in his heart. Although this Vajra puppet's strength was extraordinary, it was after all refined from a human's physical body. It ultimately did not lack the skin. Therefore, puff! Xiao Yan lifted his hand gently. A cluster of crimson-red flames slowly bloomed in his palm with a puff sound. It formed a beautiful fire lotus. The flames leaped on the lotus petals, appearing like a living creature. At a glance, it appeared to be somewhat intelligent. The temperature of the entire place suddenly rose the moment this flame appeared. The expressions of quite a number of people present also changed. This is a heavenly flame? Although he had long heard that Xiao Yan possessed a heavenly flame that an ordinary person could not control, Ren Fu's heart involuntarily felt some shock when he personally saw it at this moment. Of course, at the same time, it also contained greed. No one would not be tempted by the most overbearing power in the world. However, Xiao Yan scoffed at this. He ignored the other party's sinister gaze. He clenched his hand tightly and the fire lotus in his palm immediately exploded. It turned into flames that filled the sky and swept in all directions. A flame of this level was naturally unable to harm the experts present. However, when it landed on the puppets, it was like dry wood meeting a raging fire. In the blink of an eye, they began to burn fiercely. This was especially so under Xiao Yan's deliberate control. The crimson-red flame spread extremely quickly and did not allow any resistance. As the red lotus comic fire burned fiercely, all of the puppets involuntarily trembled and twitched. In the end, everyone could only watch helplessly as their puppets were incessantly melted by the heavenly fire. In the end, all of their steel bodies were completely melted into a pool of molten iron. Looking at the Vajra puppet, although it had also been greatly melted by the heavenly flame, it was still a terrifying existence comparable to a peak origin emperor. In addition to Ren Fu's intervention, it was only barely able to extinguish the flames. However, even so, the Vajra puppet was left with a broken body. Even if it could still fight, its strength would definitely be greatly reduced. At this moment, the Vajra puppet that was comparable to a peak origin emperor was completely crippled. Xiao Yan! Xiao Yan! Xiao Yan! Today, I will kill you with my own hands. How could Ren Feng not be furious that his greatest reliance had been destroyed? The Genesis chi within his body crazily surged as his body trembled uncontrollably. His face had turned bright red as killing intent surged within his furious eyes. Just as he was about to attack, Xiao Yan waved his hand and a ray of light shot out. A punch ruthlessly collided with it. It was undoubtedly the Northern King. North King, kill him. Chapter 1269. The clash between the Northern King and Ren Fu became even more intense as the words that were filled with killing intent were spat out. At the same time, the intense battle between the experts of the two sects began once again. Without the help of those puppets, the originally great advantage that the experts from the two sects had immediately disappeared. At this moment, both parties were fighting again. Even though the people from the two sects joined hands, they had difficulty suppressing the experts from the burning flame valley. At the same time, the gazes of the two Ghost Hall origin emperors in the sky also landed on Xiao Yan. Ancestor Burning Heaven would be personally dealt with by Hall Master Xiao, so the two origin emperors would naturally deal with Xiao Yan. Although you have quite a few tricks up your sleeve, you are still fated to be unable to escape this calamity. It is indeed our negligence that allowed you to successfully escape for so many years. However, it won't happen this time. Strange laughter rang out from the mouths of the two origin emperors. The two of them drew closer and closer to Xiao Yan. The latter narrowed his eyes as his expression gradually became solemn. In the next moment, just as the two origin emperors attacked, several sonic booms suddenly rang out in the sky. Soon after, a series of figures sent the two origin emperors flying. Only when the figures came to a stop did everyone see that several dozen experts with powerful auras were currently standing around Xiao Yan. They stared coldly at Xie Shan and the two origin emperors. Haha, looks like we've come a little late. Beside Xiao Yan, Qing Feng laughed loudly. His gaze rapidly became heated as he watched the intense battle. You're not late. You've come just in time. Xiao Yan gently patted Qing Feng's shoulder and nodded. The latter grinned and exchanged glances with the other people beside him. Their figures rapidly separated, forming two groups. Each group stared at an origin emperor. Xie Shan, who was in the middle, was left to Xiao Yan. When they saw the sudden appearance of these people beside Xiao Yan, especially when they discovered that these people were all origin kings or above, their originally icy faces immediately became ugly. Over 30 origin kings. Forget about the two origin emperors, such a group was sufficient to sweep through the entire southern region. It should be known that even if the number of origin kings that the three large sects possessed were combined, there would only be 30 to 40 of them. However, Xiao Yan had actually forcefully brought so many experts with him. This was really unimaginable. Each of them faced 16 origin kings, and most of them were high-level origin kings. This situation quickly caused their faces to turn ashen. Compared to fighting alone, they were more afraid of working together. Although that seemed to be of some help, if each of them faced the attacks of 32 origin kings at the same time, they would be defeated even faster. Xiao Yan's arm suddenly shook. A purple-colored flame rose on the heavy Xian ruler in an instant. His somewhat solemn gaze also landed on Xie Shan on the opposite side. A dense voice was slowly emitted as he spoke. He spoke with a cold voice. Everyone, since everyone is here, then, let's do it. Asterisk boom. Asterisk following Xiao Yan's order, the 32 spiritual guards beside him immediately rushed forward. They transformed into numerous rays of light and violently collided with the two origin emperors from the Ghost Hall in the blink of an eye. Immediately, a shocking energy ripple suddenly erupted. The sound of rushing wind repeatedly sounded. The intense collision between both parties had completely unfolded at this moment. At this moment, Xiao Yan and Xie Shan looked at each other. Their eyes were cold, but they did not immediately attack. When I first entered the extreme south and arrived outside the Burning Flame Valley, I initially thought that the battle with Yu Fu was because I had fought in the Fong family. However, I only understood later that it was actually because of your family. The Sky Poison Dragon Scorpion Beast clan has always been known as invincible. Although I dare not say that I truly have no opponents, the Sky Poison Dragon Scorpion Beast clan will definitely exterminate those who kill my clan members. As a result, our enemies are usually unable to live for long, Xieshan said indifferently. Xieshan faintly said. At the same time, killing intent surged in his eyes. He clenched his hands in the air and the pitch-black sickle and short sword landed in his hands. I have never been merciful to those who want to kill me. With a cold snort, Xiao Yan suddenly swung the huge ruler in his hand. He waved his arm and a ruler light immediately swept out, shooting towards Xieshan. After witnessing the might of Xiao Yan's heavenly flames earlier, Xieshan naturally did not dare to underestimate him when he faced Xiao Yan again. He held the sickle in his right hand and the sword in his left. His hand held the hilt of the sword in a reverse grip. He drew several energy pillars in the air in front of him. As they condensed, they actually perfectly overlapped. Afterwards, he viciously slashed at the ruler light that was charging over. 1,000 heavy blades. Soon after, the 1,000 heavy blades collided with the ruler light that Xiao Yan swung out. An earth-shaking energy ripple immediately swept out when the two collided. Xiao Yan and Xieshan's figures also rushed forward at the same time. One of them held a huge ruler while the other waved a chain. The sickle flew and arrived in front of Xiao Yan in the blink of an eye. The wide ruler was immediately lifted and easily blocked this attack. In the next second, he turned around and swept out with his ruler. A force of 500 kilograms violently smashed onto the short sword that was only 3 fingers wide. After a wave of sparks, Xieshan's body involuntarily retreated. His expression also changed. The strength that Xiao Yan's ruler contained far exceeded his imagination. Xieshan did not dare to believe that a human's body was actually able to unleash a physical strength that was even stronger than some powerful magical beasts. This was simply unbelievable. Not only did he lose all feeling in his hand from that one strike, even his entire arm was trembling uncontrollably. There were even traces of blood flowing down from his palm. This caused him to instantly become solemn, and the fury in his heart involuntarily rose. Xieshan had suffered a small loss in the first collision between the two of them. He had lost because he was careless and lost because he did not know. On the other side, Xiao Yan's body did not move. The huge ruler in his hand trembled gently and a buzzing sound spread. When Xieshan raised his head, he saw a cold smile on the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth. After which, his body no longer moved. However, Xieshan's expression changed once again. His body immediately pulled back decisively. At the same time, his right hand waved the chain and controlled the short sword to ruthlessly pierce forward. Clang! The next second, sparks shot out. Xiao Yan's body suddenly appeared at the spot where Xieshan had been standing earlier. The thick blade of the ruler easily blocked the tip of the short sword. Soon after, Xiao Yan once again broke through the air and gave chase. He did not intend to give Xieshan even the slightest chance to catch his breath. Chapter 1270. Clang! After the first collision, the battle between the two of them became even more intense. Xieshan became a little more cautious when the two of them collided. He no longer dared to easily receive Xiao Yan's heavy ruler. However, with his frightening peak origin Huang cultivation and his speed that was comparable to an expert from the origin zone realm, Xiao Yan was unable to do anything to the other party. Instead, he became a little miserable under Xieshan's flying scythe. Although Xiao Yan was able to easily block the flying scythe by relying on the heavy Xian ruler, the chain on it was just like a living thing. When the two collided, it simply wrapped around it. The flying scythe bypassed the heavy Xian ruler's block and directly cut towards Xiao Yan's neck. If he did not rely on his own speed and extremely strong defense, it was likely that Xiao Yan would have difficulty dodging this sharp attack from the other party. Xiao Yan's body did not dare to pause even a little after dodging the flying scythe. His hand abruptly exerted force and violently pulled the heavy Xian ruler back from the encirclement of the chains. It carried sparks and a sharp friction sound that permeated the sky. Soon after, his body abruptly charged forward. His hand held the heavy ruler as he violently swung it towards Xieshan. With the flying scythe, Xieshan held the advantage in long-range battles. If he could not close in, he would not be able to defeat Zhou Yuan. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan's figure had already appeared in the sky above Xieshan's head. Both of his hands held the enormous ruler tightly as a stern cry was emitted from his mouth. Soon after, he furiously hacked at Xie Shan's head with a momentum that could split a mountain. This attack did not contain any fancy moves. It only contained a terrifying surging power. As the tip of the ruler descended, a powerful oppressive force followed. Wherever it passed, the invisible space turned into a vacuum. The sound of the wind made one's heart tighten. Again! Xie Shan merely laughed coldly as he looked at the heavy ruler that was swiftly moving in his eyes. After understanding Xiao Yan's strength, he was naturally fearless when facing Xiao Yan again. The short sword in his left hand rotated and the chain rotated, retrieving the flying scythe. At the same time, his right hand was suddenly clenched into a fist. Powerful Genesis Qi covered the surface of his fist and agglomerated into a cuticle. Soon after, he suddenly swung his fist out violently and collided with the enormous ruler above his head. Xie Shan's fist was thrown forward and the space in front of him immediately began to fluctuate intensely. Circular invisible energy ripples swiftly swept over the place. The instant the sharp sonic boom appeared, Xie Shan's fist violently collided with Xiao Yan's heavy ruler. Bang! A ferocious strength instantly erupted when the two collided. The space around the two of them instantly collapsed. Xie Shan's body sank slightly under the powerful energy that was contained on the enormous ruler. Soon after, a low cry sounded from his mouth. His arm suddenly shook and an even more frightening strength violently erupted from the collision between the two. The enormous ruler was instantly sent flying and actually escaped Xiao Yan's control. Xiao Yan's eyes were filled with shock as he stared at Xie Shan's body. At almost the same time, Xie Shan suddenly waved his left hand. The sound of chains immediately rang out as he picked up the black flying scythe and once again appeared in front of Xiao Yan. The flying scythe was icy cold as it swiftly cut through the air and aimed for Xiao Yan's throat. Qi! However, what made Xie Shan's expression change was that the flying scythe had once again passed through Xiao Yan's body. It was another afterimage. The moment the heavy Xian ruler left Xiao Yan's hand, his figure had already disappeared from the spot. Although Xie Shan regained his senses, it was already too late. The moment he turned his head, Xiao Yan's figure was already standing behind him. Xiao Yan's hands were forming a seal, and a giant flaming finger had already formed above his head. Before Xie Shan could do anything, it ruthlessly smashed down. Overflowing desolation finger. A low and deep cry was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth. The energy aura contained in the fire finger that fell from above his head became even more powerful at this moment. Its vast and mighty aura soared with the wind. The frightening energy contained within it caused Xie Shan to knit his brows at this moment. Xiao Yan was after all an expert at the peak of the Origin Emperor level. Although the speed of this attack was quite fast, the might of his attack could not be underestimated. Xiao Yan's foot stomped heavily on the ground and vast ocean-like surging Genesis Qi immediately surged out. It swiftly agglomerated into a substance-like energy shield behind him and forcefully received Xiao Yan's desolation finger. Although Xie Shan had forcefully withstood Xiao Yan's overflowing desolation finger, his expression did not change much. Instead, the killing intent in his eyes gradually became denser. While facing Xiao Yan, his hand, which was holding the short sword, began to swiftly tremble. Following the crazy pouring of the Genesis Qi in his body, one could see the short sword in his hand appear to have split into a countless number of pieces at this moment. Numerous afterimages were both real and illusionary as they contained a cold glint. Following the trembling of the bone chain, sword shadows shot out from all directions, wrapping around every part of Xiao Yan's body. His attack was sharp and vicious. Xiao Yan's expression did not change in the face of this attack. His heart was completely calm. His feet did not move as he instantly used the absolute sky steps. His body strangely swayed left and right in the air, dodging the sword shadows that permeated the sky. Even though there were some that occasionally collided with his body, they were easily blocked by the powerful defense of the golden elephant skill. He even extended his hand to recall the heavy Xian ruler. The wide ruler was swung in an agile manner in Xiao Yan's hand, blocking some of the sword glows. The fire glow that erupted from the heavy ruler shone on his face, causing him to appear completely calm. Until a certain moment, when Xiao Yan's figure suddenly flashed to a certain area of space filled with chaotic sword shadows, the light in his eyes brightened, and a low roar sounded from his throat. Soon after, the heavy Xian ruler in his hand was swung out, mixed with blazing purple flames. Soon after, It ruthlessly struck a sword shadow that seemed both real and illusory among the sword shadows that filled the sky. Clang! The instant the clear sound of collision rang out, the sword shadows that filled the sky abruptly dissipated. Only a short sword connected to a bone chain suddenly appeared in the air. It was also a pitch-black short sword, and at this moment, it ruthlessly clashed with a heavy Xian ruler's heavy blade. Ha! A low cry was suddenly emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth as he sensed the powerful force erupting from the short sword. He did not hesitate to wildly pour the Genesis Qi in his body into the huge ruler. At the same time that the flame on the ruler soared, an explosive force also surged out from the heavy Xian ruler. Finally, it violently charged into the short sword. Bang! A muffled sound of collision abruptly rang out, and the short sword and the bone chain were instantly sent flying. However, Xiao Yan's entire body shuddered in an instant, and an ice-cold killing intent that made his heart palpitate revolved around his body. Great Way of the Dead. Chapter 1271. After Xie Shan's dark and cold cry sounded, Xiao Yan immediately saw numerous enormous black-colored sickles swiftly agglomerating in the empty space around him. They formed an inescapable net that surrounded Xiao Yan. The pitch-black sickles were suffused with an icy luster, and the chilling murderous aura on them made one's heart tremble. At a glance, the sickles that filled the sky were like the beckoning hands of the god of death. The two sides had yet to fight, but they could make one lose all will to fight. Even with Xiao Yan's current state of mind, he still felt some fear in the face of these sickles. Great Tao materialization, huh? Xiao Yan knit his brows tightly. He let out a low groan from his mouth and his body suddenly shook. The purple-colored flame within his body immediately surged up and surged out from the pores all over his body. It swiftly covered every part of his body. After which, he swung the enormous ruler violently and a fierce, intense flame swiftly swept apart. The icy cold aura that surrounded Xiao Yan's body actually slowly became paler. A moment later, it actually completely disappeared. Under the power of the heavenly flame, the chilling aura from the sickles had been reduced to the lowest point by Xiao Yan. Looking at the purple flames that filled the surface of Xiao Yan's body, a look of surprise flitted across Xie Shan's eyes. As expected of a heavenly flame, its power was unmatched even in the entire world. Soon after, he sneered coldly. So what if you have a heavenly flame? Don't tell me you want to rely on this to block my great Tao of death? If so, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Although the heavenly flame was powerful, his grand Tao of necromancy wasn't so easy to deal with. Not to mention the huge gap between their cultivations. When he went all out, even the heavenly flame couldn't block his attack so easily. In response to Xie Shan's sneer, Xiao Yan paid no attention to him. He continued to circulate the Genesis Qi in his body, filling every inch of his muscles with a powerful feeling. At the same time, vast Genesis Qi frantically poured into the giant ruler in his hand. Xiao Yan's disregard made Xie Shan's face twitch. Then, with a chilling smile, he waved his hand, and the sickles that filled the sky immediately slashed towards Xiao Yan. At the same time, Genesis Qi was continuously poured into the chain in Xie Shan's hand. It flickered faintly as a powerful force quietly gathered. 7 Heaven-breaking ruler. In the face of the giant sickles that pounced over like hungry wolves, Xiao Yan slowly closed his eyes. It was only when the sickles were within a few feet of him that Xiao Yan abruptly opened his eyes. His body instantly spun around, and he swung out the 7-feet-long ruler without any hesitation. His momentum was breathtaking as it fiercely collided with the sickles. After destroying most of the sickles, Xiao Yan hurriedly withdrew his giant ruler. As the ruler shadows flipped, he continuously used the 6 corporeal forms. Although he managed to block several sickles, the ruler shadows were forcibly broken, and a huge wound was slashed open on his back. Blood immediately gushed out, and the intense pain made Xiao Yan's face contort. Fresh blood continued to flow, but Xiao Yan did not have the time to bother about it. The enormous ruler in his hand was swung repeatedly. Only then did he block the remaining sickles. However, Xie Shan's body suddenly moved at this moment. Following the appearance of a couple of afterimages, his body suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Yan in a ghost-like manner. Xie Shan's sudden appearance in front of him caused Xiao Yan's pupils to abruptly shrink. He could not help but feel alarmed by Xie Shan's speed. Xie Shan's speed seemed to have far surpassed his previous speed. Could it be that he has been? While Xiao Yan was shocked, the sickle in Xie Shan's hand slammed down, and the sharp blade pierced Xiao Yan's chest. The latter's expression abruptly changed at this moment. Xiao Yan, your strength is it's over. Xie Shan sneered. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes as he swung the sickle in his hand. In the next second, it landed on Xiao Yan's chest. Clang! Following a clear sound, the black robe in front of Xiao Yan's chest was easily torn apart by the sickle, revealing his body that was covered with scales and a layer of golden flowing light. These were the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor and the Golden Elephant skill. At the same time, the two layers of defense on Xiao Yan's body were forcefully broken apart. The tip of the sickle penetrated his skin, even cutting his ribs and injuring his internal organs. If it were not for the defense on his body, it was likely that Xiao Yan's internal organs would have been torn apart. What? The expression in Xie Shan's eyes immediately hardened when he saw this scene. He turned his left hand and the short sword in his hand pierced forward. However, Xiao Yan's body fell backwards. A pitch-black curtain appeared behind him, and his body was instantly swallowed. Void. Great way. The successive unforeseen events caused Xie Shan's expression to instantly turn gloomy. He did not expect that Xiao Yan still had the strength to retaliate after he attacked. Even the power of the great way that Xiao Yan had grasped shocked Xie Shan. Xiao Yan involuntarily spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood when his figure once again appeared at a certain spot in the empty space. His expression swiftly turned pale. The intense pain on his chest and back caused his entire body to tremble. This was especially the case for the wound on his back that was left behind by the great Tao's strength. At this moment, fresh blood was still flowing uncontrollably. This was even more troublesome. The thing that shocked Xiao Yan the most at this moment was that this fellow, Xie Shan, had been hiding his true strength from the very beginning. From the looks of his attack earlier, regardless of whether it was his speed or strength, it far surpassed the strength that he had displayed at the beginning. At this moment, Xiao Yan was already certain that this Xie Shan was likely the third expert from the Source Zone within the Burning Flame Valley other than the two in the sky. You are Source Zone. Xiao Yan's gaze was grave. This fellow had been delaying and hiding his true strength. What exactly was he trying to do? Haha, have I been discovered? But it doesn't matter. As long as I get rid of you, no one will be able to sense my true strength. Xie Shan, who had turned around, could not help but grin when he heard this. His grin was rather sinister. Xie Shan had originally planned to hide his true strength until the end. After the two sects had joined forces to annihilate the Burning Flame Valley, he would take Ren Fu by surprise and kill him. That way, the extreme south would become his world. However, who would have expected that Ren Fu would actually collude with the Ghost Hall? This involuntarily caused his plan to become troublesome. Fortunately, Xiao Yan's heavenly flame had easily destroyed Ren Fu's Vajra puppet, so that fellow was naturally no longer a threat. As for the Ghost Hall experts, he would naturally leave them to Ancestor Fentian to deal with. The more they fought until both sides were injured, the happier he was. Ha ha ha, fight fiercely. It's best if they all die. This way, I can obtain the entire extreme south without any effort. Chapter 1272. Now it's your turn. Xie Shan smiled densely. He glanced at the intense battle between Ancestor Fentian and Hall Chief Xiao in the sky. Soon after, his extremely cold gaze once again returned to Xiao Yan. A thought passed through his mind and the vast and mighty Genesis Qi in his body was immediately poured into the scythe in his hand. It won't be that easy to kill me. Xiao Yan's expression changed when he saw Xie Shan's eyes shooting over. He let out a cold snort. Immediately, both of his hands were swiftly raised. His 10 fingers were linked together and a surging spiritual strength swiftly surged out. Soon after, it swiftly agglomerated in the empty space beside him. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into 9 bodies that were nearly solidified. At this moment, the aura of these 9 avatars had already reached the Great Yuan King class. Over the past 3 years, Xiao Yan's 9-body transformation art had also improved along with his cultivation. The cultivation of the 9 clones had already reached the Origin King stage when Xiao Yan left the Fire Maple Forest, and after the baptism in the Lightning Pool, they were lucky enough to break through to the 2-star Origin King stage. They could be said to be a powerful force. Oh, clones. And they have the cultivation of a 2-star Origin King. Not bad, but this method is only useful against ordinary Origin Emperors. Against me. Xie Shan let out a faint cold laugh as he glanced at the 2 Origin Emperors on the other side, who were in a dangerous situation under the combined attacks of Qing Feng's group. However, before the words in his mouth could be completely spat out, he saw the 9 avatars beside Xiao Yan flashing with a white light. The light continued to gather. Within a couple of breaths' time, it had completely merged into one. The 9 avatars had also merged into one. What if it's like this? Xiao Yan faintly glanced at this extremely confident fellow. A low, cold snort was emitted from his throat. His eyes exchanged glances with the avatar by the side. The two of them laughed coldly with a tacit understanding. Immediately, their bodies flashed. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded Xie Shan from the front and back. The 9 clones merged into one, and their strength soared. At this moment, the cultivation of the clones was already comparable to a 7-star origin king, and their battle prowess was extraordinary. If they really fought, even Xie Shan would not be able to completely ignore them. The expression in Xie Shan's eyes involuntarily changed when he saw that the cultivation of the avatar behind him had risen to that of a 7-star origin king after the merger. The strength of this avatar was indeed shocking. If the strength of the 9 avatars was a little stronger, they might even be able to create an avatar that could compare with the actual body of Xiao Yan. That would be truly frightening. The fighting strength of just one Xiao Yan was already so shocking. If another Xiao Yan were to be formed from the merger of his avatars, even he would have difficulty dealing with it. Fortunately, the situation that he had imagined did not appear. Hence, these 2 people were still no match for him. Xie Shan, do you still dare to say it's useless against you? Xiao Yan did not give Xie Shan any time to reply after his extremely cold voice sounded. Together with the avatar behind him, the 2 of them moved in unison. Soon after, they transformed into 2 afterimages. Their hands held enormous rulers as they hacked at Xie Shan from all directions. The 2 of them arrived in front of Xie Shan one after another. Both of their hands held the heavy ruler tightly. A low cry was emitted from Xiao Yan's throat. The enormous ruler was immediately swung horizontally, appearing to be sweeping away all the thorns. At the same time, the incarnation behind Xie Shan raised the enormous fire ruler high above its head with both hands. It adopted a mountain-splitting momentum as it cut through the sky and furiously hacked at Xie Shan's head. The powerful attacks from 2 different directions made it difficult for Xie Shan to take care of everything. Such a pincer attack made it impossible for him to dodge. He could only face it head-on. Humph! Do you think I'm afraid of you? Death Spirit Great Tao, Life-Reaping Sickle. Seeing this, Xie Shan let out a low cry and put the chain back into his storage ring. Then he struck out with both hands one after the other. Almost at the same time, the power of the Great Tao rapidly condensed in his palms. In the blink of an eye, it turned into 2 huge pitch-black sickles. The sickles in his hands emitted a hoo-hoo sound as they rotated. At the same time that they broke through the air, the chaotic afterimages formed a circular shield. At the instant when Xiao Yan's and his avatar's attacks were about to land, the shield suddenly pushed outwards with great force. The 2 sickles immediately collided intensely with the huge ruler. At the same time that a fire glow shot out, the powerful strength that it carried also instantly forced Xiao Yan and his avatar back. Humph! So what if you're a clone? So what if you're a peak source king? In front of the source zone, you're nothing. After forcing the 2 of them back with one strike, Xie Shan's expression did not change. His figure flashed, and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of the incarnation. His 5 fingers curled into claws, and he ruthlessly tore through the incarnation's chest. His body immediately flew backwards uncontrollably. Before he could stabilize his body, a ferocious expression suddenly appeared on Xie Shan's face. Almost at the same time, the power of the Great Way condensed behind the incarnation once again. A pitch-black sickle was ruthlessly slashed towards the incarnation. At the same time, Xiao Yan, whose body had paused, flashed and arrived behind Xie Shan. The enormous ruler in his hand was violently swung from bottom to top. A sharp ruler glow also erupted in an instant. 7-layered heaven-breaking ruler. With a swing of the ruler, Xie Shan's body instantly exploded and turned into nothingness. This was just an afterimage of the latter. Xiao Yan's expression immediately changed drastically when he saw this scene. Before he could dodge, an extremely cold aura was transmitted from behind him. Xie Shan's body appeared behind him in a ghost-like manner. His face was ferocious as he raised his right hand. Soon after, bang! The palm landed heavily on Xiao Yan's back.
A powerful force immediately gushed out and the defense on the surface of his body was broken in the blink of an eye.
A solid palm print appeared on Xiao Yan's back along with a huge wound. Fresh blood gushed out and looked extremely dazzling. Xiao Yan's body was also forcefully sent flying by this palm. His expression swiftly turned pale. A couple of large mouthfuls of fresh blood were spat out from his mouth. Even his aura had been greatly reduced. This palm had caused Xiao Yan to be seriously injured. However, in the blink of an eye, he discovered that Xiao Yan's avatar was standing in the empty space a short distance away. Xiao Yan's expression was cold and stern as he stared at him. Xiao Yan's originally solid body had become much more illusionary at this moment. It seemed that this avatar had paid a great price in order to receive that attack. "Hey, you're still here? Then let me personally end you." With a sneer, Xie Shan's body trembled slightly. The clone's expression instantly changed and he hurriedly retreated. Xie Shan unhurriedly chased after him. At the same time, the remaining Genesis Qi in Xiao Yan's body was rapidly depleting. Hee, too slow, too slow. You think you can escape my pursuit with such speed? You overestimate yourself. Xie Shan completely ignored Xiao Yan, who was currently seriously injured. His body appeared in front of the avatar in the blink of an eye. The noses of both of them were about to touch. Just when the latter's expression changed, the sound of rushing wind suddenly appeared behind him. Soon after, the avatar was kicked flying by Xie Shan. After a couple of collisions, the avatar was repeatedly abused by Xie Shan until a certain moment. Poochie. The 5 fingers of Xie Shan's right hand curled into a claw and pierced the clone's chest from front to back. The clone's body gradually turned illusory as it hung limply from Xie Shan's arm. However, the ferocious expression on Xie Shan's face gradually widened at the next moment. His brows were suddenly knit together. He could clearly sense that the energy within the body of this avatar in front of him was actually wildly surging. The energy that was about to scatter swiftly gathered. After which, it became even more wild and uncontrollable. This also caused Xie Shan's eyes to suddenly shrink. That guy, self-destructed? With this thought, how could Xie Shan care so much? He hurriedly wanted to withdraw his arm from this fellow's body. However, the moment he raised his head, his incarnation's face was filled with mockery. His indifferent, bone-chilling voice was slowly spat out. What? Sorry, it's too late. In the next second, a loud explosion resounded in the sky. Chapter 1273. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a violent explosion that contained an enormous amount of energy suddenly resounded in the sky. The few battles that were closer to the battle were forced to stop because of this, and there were even some people who were injured by this energy. The buzzing sound continued to resound in everyone's minds, causing their vision to become slightly blurry. The sound of the explosion rang out. Waves of seemingly solid energy ripples rippled wildly. Even the empty space instantly collapsed under this frightening energy collision. It was a long while later before the energy ripples that permeated the sky slowly scattered. Hence, the collapsed space recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the sky, Xie Shan's figure finally appeared in front of everyone once again under the attention of countless pairs of eyes. However, at this moment, Xie Shan had already recovered his original appearance. His body had transformed into the body of a magical beast. His appearance was ferocious as he observed everyone present. This was especially the case when his pair of dark red beast eyes landed on Xiao Yan's body. A wild roar was involuntarily emitted. A buzzing sound once again sounded in the sky. Numerous surprised gazes repeatedly landed on Xie Shan's body. At a glance, everyone immediately discovered that the right side of the giant beast's body was missing a piece. It was Xie Shan's arm. During the explosion of his avatar, he was the closest and couldn't avoid it. Although he used his surging Genesis Qi to resist, he still couldn't protect his right arm. It was likely that he had transformed into his original form after being thoroughly enraged. Great Dao skill. Soul-reaping ghost scythe. Xie Shan's eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. He widened his large mouth and a frightening suction force immediately surged out. At the same time, a strange caw-caw sound was suddenly emitted. Numerous bone chains that were connected to an enormous sickle flew out of Xie Shan's mouth. Their target was not only Xiao Yan but also the other experts who were closer to them. Moreover, there were quite a number of people among them who were from his 2 sections. This Xie Shan could really be called vicious and merciless by not differentiating between friend and foe. Xie Shan could really be called vicious. It was naturally difficult for those present to escape from such a strange attack. After all, it was an attack from an expert from the source sect. Given their strength, it was naturally difficult for them to block it. However, just as the ghost sickle was about to hook towards Xiao Yan and arrive in front of him, Xiao Yan finally slowly lifted his pale face. His eyes stared intently at the ghost sickle that was swiftly magnified in his eyes. He slowly raised his hand and a fire wheel slowly rotated in his right hand. Buddha's anger, reincarnation. A hoarse voice slowly sounded. At the same time, Xiao Yan lifted his hand, and the wheel in his palm abruptly sped up. At the center of the wheel, a thumb-sized black dot gradually distorted. When the ghost scythe arrived in front of Xiao Yan's body suddenly trembled, and a tremendous pillar of black light shot out from the wheel, instantly submerging the ghost scythe. Even the power on the ghost scythe and the bone chains were rapidly swallowed by the black light pillar until they dissipated into nothingness. However, this was not the end. The enormous black light pillar swelled with the wind and swallowed everything in front of it. The sky became the same color and the entire world was dyed with a black color that could not be erased. All the ghost sickles that passed by were either swallowed or disintegrated under the strength of this light pillar. They returned to this world under an unknown force. Until... bang! The light pillar directly penetrated Xie Shan's mouth and the power on it immediately became sluggish. Xie Shan's body also began to tremble intensely because of this. After a long while, Xie Shan's entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. Fresh scarlet blood continuously flowed out from his body. His entire body began to rapidly swell at a speed visible to the naked eye. At a certain moment, the pitch-black light pillar actually completely penetrated Xie Shan from the front to the back with a bang. The life in his eyes also swiftly disappeared at this moment. Chi chi chi. The power on the light pillar continued to soar. In the end, Xie Shan's enormous body was swallowed by the light pillar, completely disappearing from the world. In the void, everyone stared dumbstruck at this scene, their eyes filled with horror. The black light pillar seemed to have an irreversible power. No matter if it was a person, an object, or Genesis Chi, once sucked into it, there was no possibility of escaping. After Xiao Yan's attack landed, the victor of the battle on the battleground was gradually determined. After losing the help of the puppets, the fighting strength of the people from the two sects had greatly declined. Additionally, the death of Xie Shan had dealt an even greater blow to them. Regardless of whether it was their fighting strength or their morale, they were far inferior to before. The momentum of the two sects had already disappeared, but the result of the entire battleground was still unclear. The two Ghost Hall origin emperors struggled to survive under the attacks of the 32 spirit guards, and the clash between Ran Fu and the North King was particularly intense. The Vajra puppet had already been destroyed, and although it was barely usable, it had been turned into a pair of scrap metal under the North King's continuous bombardment. Ran Fu's face was ashen. Even he didn't dare to touch the lightning power on the North King's body. The situation on First Elder Li Chengxiu's side was also going well. The only thing he had to worry about was the clash between Patriarch Burning Heaven and Hallmaster Shao. The two peak experts on the battleground had already fought for a long time without a victor being decided. Quite a lot of the Genesis Chi within their bodies had already been exhausted. If Xiao Yan had not finished off Xie Shan, it was likely that Xie Shan would have been able to achieve his goal should the battle drag on until the two of them were completely exhausted. Even though this was the case, the situation on the battleground was still unclear. One of the main reasons why the experts from the two sects were still desperately holding on was because of the existence of Hallmaster Shao. They knew that regardless of who this fellow was, as long as Hallmaster Shao was victorious, it would be difficult for the Burning Flame Valley to escape destruction today. Therefore, the important point was not them. Instead, it was the battle between these two people. The success or failure of everything would be on the shoulders of the Burning Sky Ancestor and Hallmaster Shao. Xiao Yan slowly raised his head as he looked at the experts from both parties who had once again entered an intense battle. His gaze landed on the two of them. In the end, the key people who could decide the outcome of this battle were the two of them. Phew! Xiao Yan let out a long breath. He hurriedly took out a couple of medicinal pills from his storage ring and swallowed them without any hesitation. A low moan was involuntarily emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth as he sensed the warm medicinal strength swiftly spreading within his body. Soon after, he hurriedly braced himself. After confirming that there was no one else around, He once again maneuvered the Genesis chi within his body. Both of his hands were slowly raised. His palms trembled and a white and blue heavenly flame appeared in his palms. After which, he widened his mouth and a cluster of bright red flames was spat out. Chapter 1274. Western Region. Green Jade City. Everyone present immediately shifted their gazes away, as a golden light flashed over the large open ground. When they looked over again, a couple of human figures had appeared on the open ground. They were surprisingly Xiao Yan's group. Xiao Yan's group was stunned. After the matter with Lutsong City, Xiao Yan's group did not stop for the rest of their journey. When they arrived at Green Jade City, Xiao Yan looked at the somewhat familiar streets and alleys in front of him. Xiao Yan's mind seemed to recall the various things that had happened back then. However, as time passed, things remained the same but people had changed. This western region had also undergone a tremendous change. In the current western region, the one who could truly be called an overlord was naturally the icily arrogant beauty in the Shilin mountain range, followed by Lu Zhongtian in the area of Sand River, and the Bai family of Green Hunchback Mountain that had prospered in recent years. These three forces each occupied a region. Among them, the Shilin mountain range was still ignorant of worldly affairs, and there were still countless human experts adventuring and training there. However, unlike before, the depths of the Shilin mountain range would be a dangerous place that everyone deeply understood in their hearts. Secondly, it was the area around Shahipu where Lu Zhongtian was located. The latter was famous for setting up an auction house, and had a rather high status in the Shilin region. Coupled with Lu Zhongtian's current powerful cultivation, his area was especially safe. Other than that, there was also the Bai clan that no one had expected. Most people in the Shilin region knew that the Bai family had once been one of the four great clans under the Heavenly Sword sect. However, after the destruction of the four great sects, the other three clans had been wiped out by someone overnight. Afterwards, the Bai family took over all the cities and mines under the four great sects, but very soon, the Bai family decisively abandoned the majority of the cities and mines. After rapidly collecting all the benefits, they basically settled down in the region of Green Hunchback Mountain, rarely showing themselves again. The Bai family acted quickly and decisively, collecting most of the benefits in the shortest amount of time possible before retreating to Green Hunchback Mountain. This allowed many people to understand why the three great clans had been wiped out. After that, there were even a few organizations that worked together to find the Bai family. However, the moment the Bai family took out two origin transformation experts, the various organizations that had gone forward were all destroyed. They did not even have the chance to surrender. It was also because of this that the Bai clan's name quickly spread throughout the Shilin region. Even so, they still remained in the vicinity of Green Hunchback Mountain, and did not seem to have any intention of expanding their clan's influence. This caused many factions in the Shilin region to be suspicious. Outsiders didn't understand this, but the Bai clan knew it very well. It wasn't that they didn't want to expand their influence. Everyone knew that only by having a huge amount of resources could a clan grow rapidly. How could the Bai clan not have such thoughts? But the reality was that they couldn't do that. The Bai clan did not wish to become the second Qin wasteland Maze Valley. To them, the Shilin mountain range's Langbing Shuang was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was the man standing behind her. Outside the vast mountain range, at the edge of the horizon, there was a slight sound of breaking through the air. Immediately, a few streaks of light suddenly flashed over, bringing along waves of sonic booms. At the same time, they had already appeared above the mountain range in the blink of an eye. After which, their figures suddenly paused and turned into a few figures. The expression on Xiao Yan's face was slightly startled as he eyed the familiar mountain range in front of him. This scene actually caused him to have the feeling of having returned home for a moment. Compared to the various disturbances in the outside world, this place was clearly much quieter. This was especially the case when he thought of Langbing Shuang now. A smile would involuntarily surface on Xiao Yan's face. After which, he waved his hand and led the few people behind him as they flew toward the deep regions of the Shilin mountain range. It was also when this group of people entered the depths of the mountain range that a white-robed figure quickly flew out from a certain mountain peak. After a moment of hesitation, he quickly flew off in a certain direction. Xiao Yan, who was flying, furrowed his brows slightly as he felt suspicious in his heart. Soon after, he ignored him and quickly headed towards the depths of the mountain range. Very quickly, several familiar figures appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the others one after another. Most importantly, The ice beauty who usually focused on cultivation also appeared in front of Xiao Yan at this moment. Looking at Xiao Yan, who was unharmed in front of her, Lang Bingshuang's cold and elegant face could not help but be a little moved. She naturally understood the dangers of the extreme south. However, Xiao Yan had been gone for 3 years. How could she not be worried? Now that she saw that Xiao Yan had returned, the emotions at the bottom of her heart were still affected. Her pair of beautiful eyes could not help but contain some hidden bitterness. On the other hand, Xiao Yan stepped forward and pulled the latter into his embrace. He ignored the struggle of the beauty in his embrace as his firm arms tightly locked the latter's delicate body. His mouth was close to her delicate ear as he gently said, "Sorry, I have returned." This simple sentence seemed to contain some kind of magic, causing Lang Bingshuang's struggling delicate body to slowly relax. After that, the little fairy doctor looked at the two people in front of her. A certain kind of expression gradually dimmed. Immediately, she quietly turned her head and no longer paid any attention to them. Bai Hua and Narwhal Snake became familiar with each other when they met. Kyer had met Lian before. However, the latter was still in a deep sleep at that time. Now that they had met, they were naturally more familiar with each other. In addition, these two women were considered to be of the same generation among the group. Hence, they chatted more freely. On the other hand, because of Lian Li Bingrui and these 3 women quickly blended together. Only the little fairy doctor sat alone for a long time. When the 3 women regained their senses, the little fairy doctor had already disappeared. At this moment, 5 people were sitting around a table in Sky Eagle's cave. There were drinks on the table. The atmosphere was strong and everyone was chatting happily. In the mountain forest, Kyer brought the 2 women to a hut that Flame Lion and the others had built for her. This little girl was the eldest young lady of the Shilin mountain range. She relied on Lang Bingshuang's pampering. Usually, the brothers would pamper her everywhere. Everything here was also requested by this little girl. Although the design of the hut was not very good, the surrounding environment was quite suitable for the 3 women. Under such a beautiful environment, the 3 of them chatted happily. Xiao Yan and Lang Bingshuang came to the hinterland of Shilin. This place had already changed greatly. A magnificent ice palace had been built. Cold fog filled the air, turning this place into a paradise on earth. Lang Bingshuang pulled Xiao Yan into the depths of the ice palace. Xiao Yan gently pulled the latter's delicate body into his embrace. The 2 of them looked at each other. Their breathing gradually became rapid and hot. On a certain uninhabited mountain peak, the little fairy doctor, who was dressed in a long white dress, was sitting alone. A pair of long and narrow eyes looked at the empty sky in the distance. There was a pair of white birds circling in the sky. They seemed to be comforting her, but also seemed to be mocking her. In this regard, the little fairy doctor could only smile foolishly. Sparkling tears fell from the corner of her eyes. Her mind once again recalled the words that Xiao Yan had said when he had saved her. "You are my responsibility." Chapter 1275. Corpses littered the foot of the valley. Countless people were heavily injured. Even experts as powerful as Origin Kings and Origin Emperors were unable to survive the battle. The people of the 2 sects were completely defeated. Countless cultivators below the Origin King level were killed or injured, and even a few Origin King level cultivators were killed. Even if the rest of the people survived, they were all seriously injured. The Heavenly Wall sect master was also seriously injured after being attacked by the energy waves. However, before he could rejoice, the North King suddenly appeared and finished him off with a punch. So far, the 2 sect masters of the 2 sects had basically died to Xiao Yan's hands. The other Origin Kings had all lost their battle prowess. The 2 Origin Kings from the Ghost Hall had also died from the pincer attack of Qing Feng and the others, as well as the impact of the Angry Buddha's Lotus Fire. The 32 spirit guards from the Spirit Ginseng clan were still alive. Thanks to some of their clan's methods, the 32 Origin Kings were able to work together and survive without any heavy injuries. However, even so, their faces were pale and their presences were rather weak. Although the ancestor of the Scorching Heavens was not heavily injured, his old body, coupled with the intense battle and the impact of the Angry Buddha's Lotus Fire at the end, did not have much strength left. Hall Master Zhao's situation went without saying. He had received most of the impact from the Angry Buddha's Lotus Fire, so he was obviously the most heavily injured. Even Xiao Yan was in a very bad state right now. He had fallen into an abyss.
Using the Angry Buddha's cycle of samsara and the Angry Buddha's lotus fire again and again was something that even he could not endure.
Although the power of the fire lotus did not directly harm him, he was unable to dodge the aftershocks. Coupled with the various injuries on his body, Xiao Yan's current condition could not get any worse. The extreme lack of strength within Xiao Yan's body, along with the various injuries all over his body, caused fresh blood to flow unceasingly from all over Xiao Yan's body. Although his body still had the strength of the medicinal pills to slowly recover, without any strength to use, the recovery effect was still a little too slow. His body uncontrollably lay on his back on the ground. At this moment, Xiao Yan really did not even have the strength to move his fingers. The thoughts in his mind gradually became blurry. Although he was unwilling to fall asleep in this manner, it seemed that both his body and his spirit were gradually leaving his control. Cough, cough, cough. On the other side, after experiencing the baptism of the Buddha's fiery lotus, the black fog that shrouded Palace Master Zhao's body had completely dissipated. His black robe was torn apart, revealing his skinny skeletal body. Even the mask on his face had been shattered by the explosion. Half of his face had been destroyed, revealing his ghastly white bones. A scarlet eyeball was still twitching under the influence of his flesh and blood. Blood continued to spurt out from his mouth, mixed with many pieces of his internal organs. At this moment, Hall Chief Xiao could be said to be at a loss for words. If he had taken the opportunity to leave before Xiao Yan could agglomerate the angry Buddha lotus flame, all of this might have nothing to do with him. However, he did not do so. Hence, he had paid a heavy price for his choice. 2 to the 2. At the same time, Qing Feng and the others also arrived at Xiao Yan's side. After carefully inspecting him, they finally relaxed. One after another, their gazes landed on the bodies of Patriarch Burning Heaven and Hall Master Xiao. At this moment, the latter had also crawled up from the ground with great difficulty. His terrifying appearance was simply nauseating. Seeing that he still had the strength to get up, Burning Heaven Patriarch couldn't help but frown. He hurriedly circulated the little remaining Genesis Qi in his body, and vigilantly stared at the person before him. Even if the other party was seriously injured, he could not be too careless in the face of someone from Ghost Hall. Cough, cough, cough. My Ghost Hall and the Heavenly Puppet Sect have prepared for nearly 4 years for today's battle, but we were still unable to easily capture Xiao Yan. To think that we would end up in such a state. I admit that I have failed in my duty. Hearing these words, the cautiousness in Ancestor Fantion's heart was reduced a little. At the very least, this fellow had admitted defeat. However, TSK. I have said that I will definitely bring Xiao Yan back today. The instant the strange laughter rang out, Ancestor Burning Heaven's face immediately sank. He quickened his pace and walked towards the ladder. All the remaining strength in his body was gathered in his palm. No matter what other tricks this fellow had up his sleeve, as long as he killed him now, there would be no future troubles. You're too slow. However, before Ancestor Fantion could arrive in front of Hall Chief Xiao, the latter extended his hand and grabbed. The storage ring on his finger flickered and a blood-red jade token appeared in his hand. Just as Ancestor Fantion was about to charge over with all his strength, the jade token was crushed by Hall Chief Xiao with all his strength. Hum hum hum. Following the explosion of the jade strip, an invisible energy immediately spread out from within. The invisible space rippled intensely and Patriarch Burning Heaven, who had charged forward, was instantly sent flying by this energy. A mouthful of old blood was spat out and the aura of his entire body swiftly fell to rock bottom. Soon after, the space collapsed and an extremely frightening aura swiftly spread out from the empty space. The strength of this aura had reached an unimaginable level. In the end, the owner of this aura did not reveal himself. However, that invisible energy directly locked onto Xiao Yan. Seeing this, Qing Feng and the rest hurriedly stepped forward. The 32 auras merged into one and formed an extremely powerful defense that blocked in front of Xiao Yan and blocked that aura. The Ginseng Spirit Clan? They actually still exist in this world. However, that's all there is to it. Sensing the aura of Qing Feng and the rest, a somewhat surprised voice rang out from the depths of the shattered space. However, soon after, the invisible energy that extended towards Xiao Yan suddenly expanded. With a single strike, it instantly destroyed the solid defense that Qing Feng and the rest had formed together. This group of people was also sent flying far away. Soon after, that aura arrived in front of Xiao Yan. After confirming that it was him, It transformed into an invisible hand that grabbed Xiao Yan's body and pulled him towards the shattered space. Xiao Yan! No! Xiao Yan! Immediately, the mouths of those seriously injured people on the battleground emitted waves of unwilling roars. This was especially the case for Bai Hua and the little fairy doctor. They used all their strength to try and climb up from the ground. However, under that frightening pressure, their bodies were once again sent flying in an instant. Xiao Yan, on the other hand, swiftly approached the shattered space under the control of that invisible large hand. Chapter 1276. Outside of the burning flame valley, Xiao Yan's body was swiftly approaching the shattered space under the control of the invisible large hand. Beside him, Hall leader Xiao wore a ferocious smile as he looked at the other people present. Although he had failed, this backup plan could easily capture Xiao Yan. With just these people present, it was impossible for them to stop this person's actions. Swoosh! However, at this moment, an air-splitting sound suddenly appeared in the sky. A hot flaming meteor immediately descended from the sky and smashed towards Hall leader Xiao, who was beside the shattered space. Immediately, the latter's pale face immediately turned pale. He looked at the cluster of fire that was swiftly magnifying in his eyes and hurriedly cried out loudly, "Chief, save me!" Humph! Soon after, a cold snort was emitted from the empty space. An invisible strength immediately soared to the sky and blasted the cluster of fire apart. However, at the same time, a human figure also appeared in front of the invisible large hand. With a wave of his sleeve, the fierce flames that permeated the sky immediately forcefully broke the invisible strength. He caught Xiao Yan's body and swiftly withdrew. "Who is it? How dare you snatch someone from my ghost temple sect?" A voice that contained anger immediately sounded in the empty space when Xiao Yan was snatched. Immediately, an even more ferocious strength swept out from within and transformed into an invisible cage that covered the entire place. A frightening aura also swiftly locked onto the person who was trying to take away Xiao Yan. The middle-aged large man involuntarily frowned when he saw that his path was sealed. He quietly said that this was troublesome in his heart. Just as he was searching all around for a way out, an invisible strength suddenly transformed into a chain that charged towards the large man. The latter did not show any signs of weakness. Both of his hands hugged Xiao Yan. His body flipped and both of his feet pressed on the chain. A powerful force immediately erupted. At the same time, he shook the chain a little and hurriedly used the force to pull back once again. "Ha ha ha, so what if you're from the Ghost Temple sect? Back when my clan was flourishing, you guys were all over the continent. You only managed to survive until now because of the protection of others." The middle-aged man coldly laughed when he heard the words that were transmitted from the empty space. His pair of crimson eyes carried some disdain as his gaze swiftly swept over everyone below. He immediately arrived in front of Li Bing Rue. After which, he slowly placed Xiao Yan's body down. After confirming that there was no mistake, he turned to look at the empty space in the blink of an eye. This middle-aged man was Zhu Hao from the Fire Maple Forest. Originally, Li Bing Rue was worried about whether Xiao Yan would be able to return. Therefore, she used the jade slip in her hand to summon him. However, she didn't expect that he would be too late. However, he had saved Xiao Yan. In that case, perhaps it wasn't too late. Although Li Bing Rue did not have a good impression of Xiao Yan, her heart still sighed in relief for some unknown reason when she saw that Xiao Yan had been saved. Humph! Shameless boasting. You're just a mere origin zone. How dare you be so impudent in front of me? The mysterious man's cold voice rang out from the void once again. Next, a ferocious power surged forth once again. Invisible chains continuously condensed, bringing with them an extremely sharp and domineering aura as they rushed towards Zhu Hao from all directions. Haha, you're just a bunch of cowards who don't dare to admit it. Bright sun in the sky. Brilliant sun's raging flames. After a sneer, Zhu Hao raised his head and roared towards the sky. A gigantic ball of flames immediately condensed in the sky, giving off a scorching fiery glow. It was just like a second sun in this world. Next, under Zhu Hao's control, several shockingly imposing beams of fire shot out from the ball of flames and collided with the invisible chains. So it's the Bloodblaze Bird Clan. You've brought me quite a few surprises today. However, a origin zone will always be a origin zone. You can never be compared to a true expert. As his voice faded, a powerful force immediately surged from the invisible chains. The chains, which had been gradually melting under the beams of fire, were now completely fearless. They coiled left and right, blocking the beams of fire. Next, they continued to rush towards Zhu Hao. Damn it! Zhu Hao's expression could not help but change slightly when he saw this. This fellow's cultivation was too tyrannical. If not for the fact that he could not personally appear, Zhu Hao would have already been unable to resist. However, who would have expected that even so, he was still unable to resist. Humph! A grand Dao technique. Glorious sun in the sky. As his voice fell, the power of the great path rapidly condensed between heaven and earth. Under Zhu Hao's control, 10 golden blazing suns condensed above his head. The frighteningly high temperature sprinkled on this world at this moment. Under this terrifyingly high temperature, whether it was the mountains or the earth below, they all began to melt like snow. If not for Zhu Hao's deliberate control, those heavily injured origin kings would have been roasted to death by the high temperature of these 10 suns. Such a terrifyingly high temperature would affect even the surrounding Genesis Chi, let alone the invisible chains. Although they were powerful, they were ultimately only a part of the whole. As they neared Zhu Hao's body, the power on the chains rapidly dissipated, until they turned into nothingness. Humph! Stubborn fellow. However, only a disdainful snort was heard from the formless space. Soon after, the formless chains that had been melted by the high temperature were formed once again. The power on them was even more terrifying than before. They charged towards Zhu Hao despite the high temperature of the 10 blazing suns. The gap between the cultivation levels was undoubtedly revealed in the current battle. In the face of overly powerful strength, even a tyrannical great path technique would not be effective. In the end, Zhu Hao's body was still bound by those chains. No matter how he struggled, it was to no avail. Below, although Li Bingrui and the others wanted to help, they were unable to do anything in the end. Zhu Hao's strength was simply too strong. In the current battlefield, there was simply no one who was a match for him. Since you don't know what's good for you, I might as well bring you back for research. It just so happens that I don't have a mount, so perhaps I can tame you. Keek. At the same time the strange laughter sounded, the invisible chain grabbed at the unconscious Xiao Yan below. However, just as the chain was about to hook onto Xiao Yan's body, another invisible strength suddenly surfaced. It easily pushed back the chain that was approaching Xiao Yan's body, while also breaking the chain that was binding Zhu Hao's body with one strike. I didn't expect a Origin Sovereign to make things difficult for a group of Origin Kings. Has the Ghost Temple sect become so shameless? Chapter 1277. Just as the invisible chains were about to latch onto Xiao Yan's body, an elderly voice rang out and the invisible chains that filled the sky disappeared. The unconscious Xiao Yan and Zhu Hao were once again freed from danger. Faint laughter continued to reverberate throughout the area, but the oppressive atmosphere that had enveloped everyone's hearts had completely disappeared in the blink of an eye. Humph, the Cloud Immortal sect has no right to interfere with the matters of my Ghost Temple sect. The dark, cold voice was once again emitted from the empty space. His tone was low and deep. Although he had already expected that this person would likely sense his actions, all of this should have happened after he had captured Xiao Yan. However, who would have expected that Zhu Hao, who had appeared midway, would disrupt his original plan? If this was not the case, it was likely that Xiao Yan would have already become his. However, it was likely that this matter would not be so easy to resolve now. This old man indeed does not wish to interfere with the matters of the Ghost Temple sect. However, the matters at the borders of the mainland should be their own matters. We have already made an agreement that we will not interfere. However, your actions have already violated our earlier agreement. The elderly voice rang out once again. This time, there was an additional trace of coldness in his tone. Humph, agreement? My Ghost Temple sect has never followed any rules. That agreement is something that you believe to exist. As long as we can complete the mission, we can do anything. What you are saying to me is a little too laughable. A mocking laughter was immediately emitted from the empty space when they heard this. At the same time, a majestic invisible force once again surged out. It transformed into a countless number of chains that grabbed at Xiao Yan. At this moment, it was most important to capture Xiao Yan and bring him back. Originally, the entire plan had been flawless. Regardless of whether Palace Master Xiao could complete the mission, as long as the person in the void intervened, Xiao Yan would be theirs no matter what.
Although they had already considered the existence of this person before this, it was not as troublesome as it was now.
Now that Xiao Yan was no longer in his hands, it would truly be difficult to capture him.
Humph, since you don't want to keep your promise, then don't blame this old man for being impolite. Sensing the surge of the invisible force, the old man's cry sounded in the sky.
At the same time, an invisible force gathered once again. The scorching hot fire turned into an invisible flame that burned the empty space until it was distorted. Immediately, when the chains shot over, the flame quickly met them. It relied on its own terrifying high temperature to burn the chains into nothingness.
That is. On the other side, Ancestor Fantion's eyes involuntarily hardened when he saw the scene in front of him.
Although both parties were relying on their spiritual strength, he was able to sense a special energy within the flame.
This energy was something that he had only sensed from Xiao Yan until now.
Haha, even if we were to fight face to face, you might not be a match for this old man. Furthermore, with just spiritual strength, your little tricks are useless in front of this old man.
The faint laughter rang out once again, and there was a hint of a sneer in his voice.
Although the chains were powerful, they were instantly turned into nothingness under the burning of the invisible flames. The so-called power was unable to be used under the flames. 6th book. Don't be arrogant in front of this hall master. The strength of my ghost temple gate is not something that your cloud celestial sect can compare with. If this hall master summons another expert from the sect, stop uttering nonsense.
If you really have that ability, it is likely that you would have already summoned them.
Now, this old man advises you to withdraw as soon as possible. Once you alarm the other two sects, it will be even more difficult for you to clean up the mess. After the old voice sounded, the frightening flame immediately pounced towards the shattered empty space from all directions. When the latter saw this, his emotions changed and he hurriedly withdrew the power that he had spread out. At the same time, the empty space also rapidly shrank. At this moment, Hall Master Zhao's face immediately revealed a terrified expression when he saw this. He hurriedly cried out a couple of times. Only then did a force surge out from the empty space. It grabbed him and forcefully pulled him back. You wretched trash! After a furious and unwilling curse sounded, the frightening aura that covered everyone's heads finally completely disappeared at this moment. Zhu Hao also heaved a long sigh of relief at this moment.
However, his eyes still cautiously stared at his surroundings.
After all, although one person had left, there was still another person's spiritual strength remaining. Compared to the former, this person was likely even more difficult to deal with. Don't worry, this old man won't do anything to you. After all, you are just a group of juniors and have no enmity with any of you. Moreover, this matter is at the border, and this old man shouldn't have interfered. If not for that fellow's stubbornness, I wouldn't have interfered here. As for this kid... Xiao Yan's body floated into the air uncontrollably as he spoke. The expressions of the surrounding people immediately changed. The Genesis Qi in Zhu Hao's body circulated as he prepared to step forward.
However, the expression on his face quickly turned stunned when he saw the scene in front of him.
Under the control of this mysterious old man, an invisible flame was pulled out of Xiao Yan's body. Immediately, it entered a certain spot in empty space and disappeared. This old man will be taking back this thing. However, as compensation, I'll give you this. Boundless power immediately began to surge, transforming into a giant invisible hand. A suction force surged from the palm, sucking in all the surrounding Genesis Qi and pouring it into Xiao Yan's body. As the blaze art slowly circulated, the boundless power was slowly absorbed by Xiao Yan. After this was done, the giant invisible hand gradually faded, and the owner of the second powerful aura also completely disappeared from the sky above the burning flame valley. The only ones left were the heavily injured members of the two sects, as well as Xiao Yan, who was currently slowly absorbing the boundless power in his body. At this moment, the two sects had been defeated, with countless casualties. The remaining experts had all lost the ability to fight. On the burning flame valley side, with the exception of Zhu Hao, although the 32 spirit guards were heavily injured, they still had the ability to fight. Ancestor Fantion had also recovered quite a bit of his strength after a period of rest. The outcome of this battle was already clearly displayed before everyone's eyes. The two sects were destroyed, and the burning flame valley had obtained a complete victory. Although several unforeseen events had occurred, everything was fortunately fine. From today onwards,
The Heavenly Puppet Sect and the 10,000 Scorpion Sect would no longer exist in the extreme south. The Burning Flame Valley would be the one and only overlord of this place.